was actually scratching a ticket. Can I walk out back?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, that's just I communicate with that.
It's not just ghosts. It's not just cryptozoology or aliens. It's all of it.
And what are we doing today, Matt?
Almost like Chewbacca. Like, you guys want to do a little beatbox live? Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to Banter with Richie B podcast. Glad to have you tonight. I am super pumped. As you guys know, I have been talking all week and maybe month. I don't even know. I've been talking a lot about it anyways. Someone very special is here tonight. And I say that because my experiences, like I've told you before, when I went to research what was happening to me, because I'm a researcher. As soon as something happens, I got to know everything about it, you know? And this guy here is one of the documentary type filmmakers that I kind of relied on because it was more boots on the ground, a little raw. We had a lot of same type of, not just terminology, but theory, you know what I mean? So it was super, super, super cool when I got to meet him up in Leominster. And we hung out a little bit. And like I told you, lo and behold, someone gives you a card, they're really busy, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just shoot him a text. I have a question, And it takes a little while because, like I said, he's always out somewhere, right? Like we were talking tonight, he said he was having dinner. I'm like, you eat? I didn't even know you ate. Like the dude's like just that busy all the time, But he takes the time to answer you back, man. And I got to respect that. And I truly, truly do respect and appreciate that. So it's a big, big deal to me. So we're not going to leave him sitting down in the back. We're going to bring him out. We're going to say hi to some people on the side. He can say hello and everybody can say hello to him and you guys can get to meet him. So here to the stage, welcome to the stage, Aleks Petakov. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going?
Really good, man. How you doing tonight?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
it. How was dinner? I asked you that before I jumped off. How was dinner? You finally got to eat, right? Did you eat out of a bag? Did you eat out of a bag? Do you eat something in the living room?
No, I was outside a little bit today, so I decided to I was checking the time. I'm like, oh boy, it's already 6 o'clock. So I got to get some dinner real quick before the show. So
no, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you a lot. And it's funny because a lot of my friends that that I go Bigfooting with, researching with, they all know, like, how much, like I watched you when I started having, I live in the Bridgewater Triangle. I have property in the Bridgewater Triangle. And I had been dealing for years with these crazy, weird incidences that kept happening, but I had no explanation for them,
Right.
And then one day I long story short, I had a tree snap one pole and I was like in the broad daylight and I was like, what the hell's going on? So now I was like, hey, what's going on? And I had my phone out like I was some kind of property owner, you know what I mean? I was going to show this guy, but nobody snaps a tree with one pole, and
right.
Lo and behold, I heard something guttural come back to me. It was crazy. I actually have it here. You could hear it anytime. But yeah, so I was like,
I think I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nuts. You know what I mean? So I was a little taken aback. So of course I get into research and well, you're one of the ones, of course, when you get into YouTube, there you are, man. And I started watching you religious, like everything. I caught up to all your stuff and then I sit there and wait. just because your boots on the ground type of guy, and we talked a little bit about this up in Leominster, you know what I mean? Do you mind if we say hello to some of the friends on the side?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. Say hi to Alex. This is Jenny. Hi, Jenny. Courtney. Big Angel Cena. These guys here. Now, we're part of the Get Haunted Network and the P3 platform. So it's a podcasters platform that I'm part of, the Get Haunted. And a lot of them come out to support you all the time. So they're awesome. And there's Purple Blur. I guess he calls himself Blurple sometimes. Jason Hughes. Look at this guy, Wojo. Do you have a sidekick? Anybody goes out with you? You always go out on your own, man. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I used to do stuff with my buddy Eli. We used to kind of tag team a little bit of it back in the day, but he's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, so it's kind of hard to configure at times. So he's got his own projects, and I started doing my own stuff. So kind of in the earlier days, like a couple of years ago, we started doing the Beyond the Trail stuff more together.
Yeah. Great stuff too. Beyond the Trail is absolutely awesome. So Wojo's like my dude. So I did this thing called Bigfoot with a Fan. And I know Wojo for a long time, but last minute I had something changed, and I need somebody to come out with me. You're Bigfoot with a Fan, and that's what we did. We went out together, and it's like 12 investigations later. He won't leave. Do you know how to get rid of him? You have to send him out to the West Coast to get rid of him. No, just checking. And Walter Burke and his sister Patty is another one that we go up with. They do the recording type, investigation research. You know what I mean? With recorders. So yeah, it's really cool. So they leave them out overnight, and then you kind of come back. And there's some really good pluses to it because you can get migrational type things or different types of animals that are in the area and kind of process of elimination type stuff, And we've got some cool stuff. So everybody says hello to Alex. Look at everybody saying hi. Those are my people. They're all good. Awesome. So thank you for that. So anyways, I had a question for you, and it was funny. When you do these things, right? Because I know you got a podcast and type platform for your shows. And I'm not a big research guy. I'm a wicked I'm a wing it guy because I love to have the natural vibe. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so what do I do? I convince myself to do a little research, right? So, but I wanted to research other podcasts. So like a year ago or so, you were on another podcast, really, really good podcast. Great question. And the first question he asked you was, tell me about from when you were born. Do you remember this?
I don't know, man. I do so many podcasts, so I don't. If you tell me the specific one, maybe.
Yeah. True. Good point.
I don't remember which show. But I literally do. Man, I've probably done just since last year, I've probably done 50 podcasts or shows, and
I bet.
I don't remember. I honestly I haven't written down all somewhere, but yeah.
Where do you get the energy?
Oh, I have to divvy it up now. So I try to do maybe 2 or 3 podcasts a month, if that, unless I got a lot going on, then I'm I have to start saying no at certain points.
Well, I know
I know you would even ask me, I think it was a month or a couple months ago. So kind of try to schedule it out a little bit. So it's a little more manageable that way. Cause sometimes it can be tough. You got so much going on, and it's I got this podcast too. And I hate having to back down on my word. I tell someone I'm going to be there unless something really crazy comes up, Yeah,
no, listen, man, I got to say, I got to commend you for all that because you're a man of your word in a sense where, just even hey, you canned out your business card. And I'm like, how? You know what I mean? But it's great because it leaves avenues open for yourself as well. Don't get me wrong. Because if anything comes up, we want to be able to hear about it as researchers, right? Which is great. But that's a lot for you to handle. And I'm very grateful for you saying, I think I had sent something to you. Hey, if I ask you now, can you come out in 2032? Be on my show? That was the first time I had asked you, right? But no, that's awesome. So tell me about it because I was looking into some of your history and your family's history, right? What an incredible story your parents have in Yugoslavia, correct?
Yeah, so my parents were originally from what used to be called Yugoslavia. It doesn't exist anymore. It's 7 different countries now. It's a whole big historical mess if you look into that. So they left in 1991 when the country started on the Civil War. So they went to South Africa, and my dad got a job down there, which was kind of also a weird place at the time because there was a lot of political turmoil. You had the whole apartheid thing going on. So I was actually born during the last year of apartheid. It was just a mess down there too. And it just started getting really dangerous, a lot of criminal activity, a lot of crime. My folks didn't really want anything to do with it. So they're like, oh, let's go to the US, right? That was the third option. And hopefully that doesn't fall apart. And, kind of 30 years later, here we are having some interesting conversations about that. But so that's kind of the long story short. But no, I mean, so they lived in Africa for, I was born in 93, so they were there from 91. We left about, it was 95, 96. So they were there for a few years, and they have all these crazy stories of when they were in Africa, all this insane stuff that they did, and, going to visit some of the neighboring countries. And South Africa is weird because you have a couple little countries that are within South Africa, they are completely surrounded by South Africa. You got Lesotho, and I forget the other one. Oh gosh, it's going to bug me. I'm going to remember it tonight when I'm off the podcast. Yeah, it's Lesotho. So you can visit all these little countries, and they would tell me these stories about how they were biking across the border with Zambia, and there's elephants going by, and they're looking back and they're like, this was really stupid at the time, but they were nuts. They were young and they didn't know any better, and they were like, from Eastern Europe, grew up in our communism. They didn't know about Africa, and you had monkeys everywhere. And like my dad told the story of one time almost having to fight a baboon because they're vicious. They will go and try to steal your stuff, and he had broke like a bottle and was basically challenging this baboon, and he bought the baboon. The baboon backed off, but I think like ostriches stealing people's purses, all these animals that just kind of are around. Lots of crazy stories like that. He had, he had some patients. He was in a Swiss missionary hospital, and he had some patients that like got attacked by a hippo. Basically has to sew people up, and hippos are one of the most dangerous animals in all of Africa. They kill more people, I believe, than crocodiles even in Africa.
They do. Yes,
they're so vicious. And the problem was, I guess this guy had gotten in between a calf and the mom. So that's, and like, you have no idea at night. Hippos, they look goofy, but they're extremely the looks kind of throws people off because they look kind of, funny, goofy, fat, round, but they're really fast on land. Like they can actually run really fast on land, even with those stubby little legs. So yeah, I guess my point is I grew up with all these crazy stories from Africa and all these adventures that my parents went on. They were talking about like when my mom was pregnant with me, they were going up into the Drakensberg Mountains looking for these ancient Bushmen painting, because you have the people that live there, the Bushmen and all these, they're kind of like old ancient cave painting sort of stuff. And they're hiking to try to get there, and all of a sudden the rain starts and they're stranded like on this cliff. So like, this is all while my mom is pregnant with me. So maybe that's instilled some of my my need for adventure. I blame them for that. No, just kidding.
No, that's not a blame. That's a gift, man. That's a gift, and it's clearly that's what it is, right? Now you mentioned like your dad was sewing people. Is he? I'm sorry. Is he a doctor or something? Or
he's a doctor. So at the time he was he had finished medical school in Yugoslavia, and everything started going sideways over there. And his buddy had gotten a job at a Swiss missionary hospital in South Africa. And he said, hey, you got to come here. We'll let the situation at home cool down for a few years. You don't, when your country's falling apart, you don't realize it's going to last 10 years and all this political instability, because you're still in denial. Like you're in denial that it's happening. Right. So they kind of thought, we'll go there for a couple of years and then it'll be all fine. Didn't really turn out that way, unfortunately. So
but that's, kudos to them, man. Fighters, right?
They had nothing. They just took off into probably one of the most inhospitable places. I remember my mom said like the first week they were in Africa, it was just this insane culture shock. They didn't go to like the big city. They went to, it was a small community in the middle of nowhere, and you have these African villages and the people, carrying like the water on their heads and
oh my goodness,
all this. She said it was just, they grew up in Eastern Europe, and Yugoslavia was like socialist, communist kind of thing. Yeah. So they didn't have a lot, but you go from that, government controls everything, to South Africa, which was all over the place. And you just couldn't be more opposite. So I remember her telling me about the culture shock. There's just a lot of crazy stories from that time period, and that's kind of the backstory, I guess.
Yeah, you must have heard all kinds of great stories. Looking back, maybe not so great in a sense, but now looking at it as the history of your family, that's great. You know what I mean? Like you're like, wow, they fought. Now wait a minute. No, sorry, I didn't mean to jump. My ADD might kick in once in a while. Just try to hang with it, okay? Don't worry, I took my meds. We're fine. So wait, how do we get? And this is probably a question you get after this, right? How do we get from South Africa to where you are now?
Yeah, so
that's a big jump. That's a big jump. Not that Yugoslavia to Africa isn't, but this is a big jump.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it's literally going from one corner of the world to the next, and the other another corner. I don't know. My parents just wanted to come over here, and so we ended up actually in New York City for a little bit when we first moved to the U.S. And my parents hated it. I didn't like it. I was a kid at the time in New York City. It's concrete jungle. This was the 90s, so it wasn't the greatest place to be. And just you go from somewhere like South Africa where everything it's nice all the time. It's beautiful. You've got fresh food and fruit and everything just growing everywhere. Monkeys, all kinds of animals, to concrete jungle, New York City. Not ideal. So they were only there for a few years. Yeah, those are pretty tough few years because my dad had to redo his residency when he got to New York. So
that's right.
It was pretty brutal. Yeah, I remember just as a kid. I mean, as a kid, you don't really remember, but we had to go, I remember like rats crawling up the toilet, just all this really traumatic stuff because, poor immigrants in New York, you don't really have much.
Crazy.
So then we ended up here in the New England area later on, a few years after that. We were only in New York for about, I want to say like 3 or 4 years. And then we ended up in the New England area. And I pretty much grew up most of my life here in New Hampshire. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of all over the place. It really is.
Well, how about your
really
parents?
Is everywhere.
That's 4 culture shocks. You go from Yugoslavia, right? And then you go to South Africa near the Apartheid, right? And then you go from there to New York, and then you're up basically in the woods in New Hampshire.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of very different places. Yeah.
That is so crazy. No wonder why you're so adventurous. I mean, I don't know if you feel the need to get out all the time and go places. It's in the blood.
I mean, I guess I kind of grew up that way too. And, when I growing up, I would go back over to, what's now Serbia and Croatia, different countries, right? And it used to be all one. So I'd grow up going back over there. Always kind of like to travel. So that kind of stuck with me into adulthood, and started traveling on my own, of course. And now I travel a lot for, my own kind of documentaries and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's always kind of been something it's kind of just been a part of me. I don't know. I wouldn't say I get antsy. It's just, I have a lot I'd like to accomplish, but you only have a limited amount of time.
Yeah, well, I think you're accomplishing an awful lot, man. I've been watching all your stuff and seeing how hard you work, man, and you must have a great support group too on top of that. You know what I mean? I mean, you got to travel and be away from home, be away from loved ones, and I mean that's got to be. I mean, you got to have the right person for that. That's a lot of hard work on both ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I'm lucky. I have very supportive family and people that are close to me, and obviously do a lot of stuff with small town monsters nowadays. So they are. And, we're all kind of similar. We're all these creative types that are interested in these mysterious topics and are kind of all over the place, right? We got people in Ohio and Tennessee, the West Coast, all over Texas. So, yeah, it's a cool kind of atmosphere. So it really fosters this sort of creative kind of environment that we're cultivating. I don't know how better to put it.
Yeah, no, I got you.
It's a place where I get to kind of create what I want. And it's, I don't have any pressure on me or anything to fake stuff or do anything that's not anything I don't feel comfortable with, which is, a lot of media nowadays. And, I know people that work in the more traditional media landscape, which is like TV, that sort of stuff, TV, Hollywood types. I've worked a little bit in that in the past when I was in school, but I don't know. I never really liked working on big movies. I'd worked on some Hallmark Channel movies, Lifetime Channel, actually.
Yeah.
I did one with Matthew McConaughey too. It was I actually worked for his stunt double, which was pretty wild.
Oh, really?
It was crazy. Yeah. It was in. There used to be a lot of. It's wild. There used to be a lot of movies that would actually film in Massachusetts. This was like over a decade ago now, in like the 2011 to 2014 range. Yeah. A lot of these Lifetime movies, and a lot of these people that are originally from Massachusetts that moved to LA and started doing movies, and they would come out here to film stuff because I guess there's good tax incentives for the production companies. Every once in a while there'd be a big one. So I was kind of in this network of people, and they'd let me know on jobs. So when I was in school, I would work some of these jobs, and one of the coolest ones I did was it was a Gus Van Sant movie called The Sea of Trees. From what I understand, it didn't do too well. Cannes Film Festival, but it was about the suicide forest in Japan, and it was Naomi Watts starred in it, Matthew McConaughey, and Ken Watanabe, who is famous Japanese actor. And so it's kind of cool. So I got to work for Matthew McConaughey's stunt double for a day. That was really awesome, and he looks just like him, very similar. He's like, "Oh, I've been at his wedding," all this stuff. It was crazy. And we did all these. We were in Worcester, we're like in Worcester, Mass. We're going to these parks, setting up a 30-foot green screen on the side of a hill, and then we have a stunt double, another one who looks like Matt McConaughey, roll down the hill, and then afterwards they'll, in post-production, they make it look like he's falling down the side of a mountain.
That's crazy.
And then it was crazy, man. There's this one part where it's like the last scene of the night that we were filming. They were doing this massive scene in this like back of this old mall somewhere Auburn, Mass. I don't remember where it was, but they had set up this scene where it was like a big cargo container filled with water, and they had the side of a mountain that was built. And what was going to happen was that water was going to break through and break the side of the mountain and make it look like, and there was going to be a stunt double in the water who then breaks through with the mountain. And it's like he's falling through some kind of a cave or something, and it busts out the side of the mountain. And there was like 3 or 4 people that looked like Matthew McConaughey standing around. They're all covered in dirt. So because Matthew McConaughey was not going to do this on his own. So I remember at one point I'm standing with the stunt double guy who is the main stunt double, Matthew McConaughey. He doesn't do any of the stunts anymore. He's just kind of like the coordinator. So he had the younger guys that look like Matt.
Yeah.
And I was just standing there kind of just zoning out. I was tired, and I'm looking, and I was creeping on the real Matthew McConaughey. He starts looking at me like, this kid, like, was this kid staring at me? And I'm like, there's 3 dudes standing around covered in dirt that look like Matthew McConaughey. And I happened to creep out the real one just by my staring. And I told his main stunt double, I'm like, hey man, like I was just zoning out. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. He's just weary about, people being like too, like trying to get a picture or something like that. But it was all cool. I got to meet him, and it was fine. But
so you realize you're kind of gawking at him. He's like, what the heck is this kid?
Yeah, because I was just kind of zoning out, just kind of staring. I was not even thinking of it, but yeah, it was that was an experience. So yeah, like I said, I got to work on movies like that, and mostly as a production assistant back when I was still in school. I realized it just wasn't for me. I just didn't. It was fun. Like I had some fun experiences, but it was not something ultimately that I wanted to do. I was much more into the multimedia, and then the internet really changed the media landscape altogether because it allowed a lot of independent people to kind of do what they're doing.
Right.
Very different than, if this was 20 years ago, you wouldn't have had that option. It just wouldn't exist. There was no YouTube. There was no Vimeos. There was none of these sites that came up. And now, of course, you have a lot of independent people that are kind of doing their own thing. The media landscape has really been revolutionized. So that's kind of, I got in, I guess, at the right time and started just doing that on the side and making my own films and put them on YouTube and other places. And was lucky enough to start working with Small Town Monsters. And it's been an awesome journey ever since. So that's kind of the story, leading up to this point, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's great because you answered one of my questions because I watch all your productions. Do you mind if I pull them up while I talked about this real quick?
Go right ahead.
I love them, man. They're really cool. Hey, there's us. We're hanging out. What's up, dude? So, so Small Town Monsters. I've been telling everybody about this. This is whenever I saw this is what I turned to. Whenever I wanted answers or, watch like Seth Breedlove and all these guys, getting on the boots, heading out into the woods. I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. And just keeping the integrity up. And that was one of my questions for you was like, you're so close to all this stuff here. This, by the way, I've been loving the LBL, dude. This is Bridgewater Triangle stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, it's very, very, a lot of parallels for sure.
You even mentioned it in the show. And I was like, yep. So these are all the things I was trying to show these guys too, that I kind of, in my Bigfoot world, I guess in a weird way, I could say I grew up on, even though I'm an old guy. You know what I mean? Because it's never. But you never got into productions, and that's why it just wasn't your thing, so to speak. You didn't feel the need to do it or want to do it, or because before, when did you start? Like when did you start getting out on your, filming and wanting to do stuff on your own?
I mean, I've always done stuff kind of on my own in a way, but I graduated from school in 2015. So, like I said, all that stuff I was talking about, the previous films I was working on, that was like from 2011 to about 2014. Right. So I was in school, and this was almost like I started out like an internship, and then I would get jobs here on the side. Gotcha. I mean, I was even skipping class to go, you get paid like $2,000 to go hang out with Matthew McConaughey's stunt double for the day. Like, I'm like, at that time I'm a broke college kid. Like, yeah, heck yeah. I had to literally, I remember I had a presentation for a class at one point, and I was like, hey, and it was actually like a video class. So I did like multimedia stuff. And I'm like, hey, I've got to go work this job with Matthew McConaughey. Like, is it possible? Oh, no, maybe that was a different one. It was one of these cheesy movies, but it was just like one of the actresses was from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I don't remember which one, but I know I was talking to her a little bit. So I did my presentation for my class on my phone on like a FaceTime thing while I was on set. Cause I'm like, I took the day off and I'm here working. I was explaining everything about the movie and how it worked. That was my presentation. So yeah, that was like 2014 and then I got out of school.
That's a smart move.
Yeah, it worked out. Luckily, my professor my professor was cool about it, luckily. But so I started when I got out of school, I just kind of started doing films on my own, just all kinds of stuff. And then I started doing like some Bigfoot stuff on YouTube. I actually did a documentary on the Loch Ness Monster because I spent some time over in Europe after I got out of school. I did a little bit of traveling. I was over visiting family in Europe, and I was actually applying for a Fulbright scholarship at the time. And that was like a whole big process. I ended up getting through the first round, didn't end up getting it because that was kind of like a crazy time period politically in the US here. But I was traveling in Europe at the time, and I went over to Asia as well. Did some crazy stuff over there, and then went to Loch Ness, did a documentary about that. And I just kind of started doing stuff on my own. And at one point I got an email from this guy, Seth Breedlove, who was doing some kind of documentaries with this thing called Small Town Monsters. I didn't really know much about it. And it was just him. It was literally him, and like he'd done like 2 movies at the time. That was it. And he was like, hey, would you want to show your film at my Minerva Monster Day event in Ohio? And this was like in like 2016. Nice. Either 2015 or 2016. I can't remember anymore, man. It's all gotten, every year is like 10 years for me. So yeah, it's like, so I did that, and then we started talking, and then he's like, hey, would you want to do like a video series for us, you know, kind of as Small Town Monsters? And again, at the time, it was literally just him. There was nobody else. I mean, people were taking vacation time on jobs to go work, you know, crew positions for STM and going to film some of the earlier documentaries. And, you know, obviously there's a lot more now, but back then it was very basic. So I did this series called On the Trail of Champ, which was a 5 or 6 part series. See, I can't even remember now. I'd have to check, about the Lake Champlain kind of monster and that whole myth, that whole legend. It's one of the posters I have up here, actually. I did that in 2017. And then I just kept on kind of doing stuff with STM. I was doing a lot of stuff on the side on my own, like just passionate. Like I did a thing in probably 2017 on the Bridgewater Triangle, like a little 20-minute film with this guy, Joe DeAndre, who's out there. I know. He was in that Aaron Cadju's documentary. So I was doing random stuff like that. And then, yeah, I mean, I was working mostly in Boston at the time. I was working in Newton for this old multimedia kind of thing. I was doing this job I had that I didn't really like it. It was all right. Like it was, you know, it was not what I wanted to be doing. So I was doing stuff like that. And then a lot of the video stuff on the side. I was filming weddings. I was doing other crap that I won't do again. I will never film another wedding. Stressful. Dealing with couples is not great. So no offense to anybody whose wedding I filmed, you know, they're great people, but it's just like not my cup of tea kind of thing.
You drifted off going, that was good. So
yeah,
Joe DeAndre, by the way, his sighting was 1.5 miles from my property. Yeah, so
I remember I went out there at one point back then because I was in Newton, so I would, like, after work one day I just drove down to Bridgewater, or I don't know if it was East Bridgewater or which one.
East Bridgewater, yep.
Claybanks was the name of the area, and I kind of poked around for a little bit and did some filming, and it was like a short film. So I just started doing stuff like that, and that was just really on the side. That was my passion. And then, you know, with STM, it was like COVID happened, everything went kind of crazy. Yeah, we kept doing videos, and then we were like, oh, let's do some more like series type stuff because we were doing films. And Seth and I kind of came up with the idea for Beyond the Trail, as we call it now, because we had this whole On the Trail of series, and I was kind of technically the first one to do it because I did the On the Trail of Champ thing, right? And that turned into a series that Seth does called On the Trail of Bigfoot, which is not a series, but a series of films. So there's like a whole line of films in that group. There was also On the Trail of UFOs, and it kind of just took off from there. So then we were like, oh, Beyond the Trail, you know, it's sort of it's similar, but it's different. And my idea was like, hey, just let me do a series where I can just do my own investigations. And, you know, I like a lot of the nature stuff, hiking, backpacking. I was always really big into that, especially up here in New Hampshire with the White Mountains and everything. Just a great place to enjoy the outdoors. So I'm, you know, inspired by stuff like Les Stroud, Survivor Man, that kind of style of doing it yourself filming. Yep. That's kind of where Beyond the Trail started. And we didn't really know what was going to happen. It just sort of, it was literally just, hey, you know, I'm going to do my own Bigfoot investigations and film them and see how it works. So
was that for the love of film or for the love of Bigfoot? Did you have an interest in Bigfoot prior to film?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've always been interested in Bigfoot and cryptozoology ever since I was a kid. You know, I've always watched a lot of the documentaries. Obviously, X-Files was huge in the 90s. You had Animal X, Monster Quest, a lot of that kind of influential stuff, the old stuff. I grew up watching that, so I was kind of thought, hey, I'd love to merge the passions doing the cryptozoology stuff, the outdoors, and the filmmaking, and that's where like Beyond the Trail really kind of came from. But I had done before that, like I said, I did the On the Trail of Champs series. I did Lions of the East, which was about mountain lions in the New England area. Did that in 2019, and it came out right before COVID in 2020. So I was kind of doing different topics, and I had my YouTube channel called Sasquatch Out of the Shadows that I did a lot of shorter documentaries on back from like 2015 on. And I started doing a live stream on there as well when the pandemic started. But after that, Beyond the Trail kind of became my main focus because it was cool. There was a lot of cases I'd personally investigated here in New Hampshire or elsewhere, or things that I was interested in that I could then cover for that series. And what you see is what you get. I mean, we don't sugarcoat it. We don't fake anything. We just show, hey, we're going to Bluff Creek, California, right? Notable for the Patterson Gimlin footage. Here's us hanging out there for a week and all the craziness that ensued. And that's kind of how the format has been. So it's been really a blessing because, again, like I said, I get to basically pick any kind of case that I want. Like I did recently the Honey Island Swamp down in Louisiana, and I've been there twice. I've done 2 videos on that. That's a topic that I don't think has had very much coverage at all. But we've done locations all over the place, so it's been really interesting. And we've had some weird experiences. We've talked to, I mean, at this point, it's over. I know it's over 100 interviews for sure. It might even be more. I'm not entirely positive, but it's taken us from Alaska to Florida and everywhere in between, basically.
Absolutely. And one of the good question that comes up here, actually, with what you just said, have you researched Bigfoot in other countries at all besides Canada? I mean, Canada.
Yeah, I guess Canada would be the only exception.
The only different one. Yeah. Have you ever had any thoughts of maybe doing that, like the Yowie?
Oh yeah,
and all that?
Of course. I mean,
Yeti.
Well, the Yeti actually was the first one that got me into.
You're a Yeti guy, yeah.
I really enjoyed the whole story of the Yeti when I was a kid. So that's kind of that would obviously the Himalayas, that sort of stuff. There's a couple other places, parts of maybe Southeast Asia. A lot of these places are kind of tough to get to, dangerous to get to. But Australia, obviously, like the Yowie. But yeah, mostly it's been North America. That's what I think is probably, in terms of the likelihood of something like this existing, North America is probably one of the best candidates, aside from maybe some of those areas of Eastern Asia. And into Russia, parts of that kind of the Himalayas and that sort of thing. But so North America, like I said, I've got a map on my website, Petakov Media, where you can see all the locations that we filmed in, and I mean it's pretty crazy. It's gotten hard to even keep up with. Just in when we started the series in January of 2021, so what, 3 years later?
Yeah,
and we've been all over. So it's been
everywhere.
Been an awesome journey. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Well, I just think it's huge because. I'm on a platform. It's paranormal, and paranormal is my first thing. I've had experiences face to face, all that stuff. So I got into all these different oddities in my head very young, and then I was always open minded, interested, the cryptids and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So when I get here, it's really awesome because everybody here on the side they're watching and everything. A lot of them are friends of mine and other people I don't know, but they're very intrigued with this, and we know that. You have a lot of experience, right? So if I want to go get something fixed, I go to the guy who fixes everything, right? If I want to talk about Bigfoot in different locations and places like that, that's why I've been trying to tell everybody, go check out Small Town Monsters, go check out Bigfoot Beyond, do your own research. And you're exactly as you say you are. Because if you remember, you were just in Alaska at the cabin, and remember that was the episode where you were sick. You weren't feeling good or whatever it was. And you were like, well, we didn't get anything, but we saw a lot of beautiful terrain. It was like, that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Like this, this is what he's like. That's huge. That's big.
Well, that's what real. I think that's just like, because what I think a big part of Small Town Monsters is that we were people that were interested in these topics, like genuinely, not just, it's not just a topic to cover, like a lot of media and Hollywood type productions for them, Travel Channel or whatever, they do a Bigfoot show. Most of the people working on those shows don't care about Bigfoot. Like they'll be doing a Bigfoot documentary this month. Next month they'll be doing some kind of crime documentary. Like they don't care. That's just it's a job. Like that's what they do, right? Whereas my first ever episode of Beyond the Trail was like a personal case in New Hampshire that I had experienced stuff out there, and I was in touch with researchers, people like Dave McCullough and others. and property owners. So it was just, I got to highlight a case that I had already been working on for a while. So that's the difference. And I think because of the way that media typically portrays these topics, especially Bigfoot, like especially after reality TV, I mean, that really just destroyed everything media-wise in general, in my opinion. Just the inundation of reality TV, people's attention spans and people's expectations. You know, they expect every time the camera's on, there's going to be activity. There's going to be something happening. When in reality, when you research this topic, 99% of the time, nothing happens. I mean, whatever it is we're dealing with, and I have no idea if it's some kind of elusive primate or if it's something weirder than that. I don't know, but it's whatever it is, it's elusive. You know, it's you don't experience it a lot. You know, there's a lot of people that I trust that are way better researchers than myself that have been doing this for a long time, and you know, they're very competent people, and you know, they have probably only a handful of experiences that they would even, you know, put in a category of maybe sort of stuff. So I think the problem is, again, you have this media unrealistic expectation. There's a lot of hoaxing, a lot of fakery, and nowadays with the online scene, everything's just such a mess, and people just make stuff up left and right, unfortunately, and they have an incentive to kind of make stuff up for the online purposes. And I'm like, well, I mean, you don't have to do that. We haven't had to do that, and yet we've still seen a lot of success on YouTube and other streaming platforms. People want to see. I think the thing is, people want to see the subjects treated with respect and not mockery and openly faking it. You know, and I think because a lot of us, like those of us at Small Town Monsters, and certainly I can speak for myself, but also some of the other people who do videos at Small Town Monsters and films, is that, again, we're passionate about these subjects. We want a return to that, the In Search Of style, the Monster Quest style, where it was like a genuine look at the topics without the sensationalism, without the ridiculous, over-the-top hoaxing and faking, and even parodying in some aspects. So I think that's why we've been so receptive with people. And I don't want to create an unrealistic image in people's minds. You know, I feel like, hey, look, I've been all over North America, and I've had a handful of occasions where maybe something's happened that I might not even consider Bigfoot, just maybe in that category, right? Whereas you have some of these people who are going out in the woods every single day and having activity or experiencing stuff, and it's like, it's kind of hard to believe, right? And then, of course, on the show is the same thing. So, that's, again, it's just been really cool to be able to pursue the passion and do it in a realistic way. And you learn so much about nature and the environment. And, you know, as a responsible kind of researcher, somebody should always be trying to debunk their own experiences, or, you know, that Bigfoot should be the last conclusion you jump to. You know, you kind of noise you hear in the woods. Animals make a lot of weird noises. It's I think there's definitely room for that nuance. And I don't know, that's just I don't want to have to change that. We won't change that. That's the way we're going to keep doing it. And if we have something happen, we'll show you. If not, you're going to see a lot of cool scenery and learn about the local area and the environment and the habitat. Because if whatever these things are, if they're out there, they have to interact some ways with their environment that they live in, whether that be a swamp in the south, or the Rocky Mountains, or the eastern forest that we have here up in the northern Appalachian Mountains. So that you've got to learn about the other critters that live out there, the other habitat, the trees, all the other species, the seasonal changes, if you want to truly try to understand maybe the weirder side of things. Yeah. No, that's it. You know, this is what I love, because I know I'm doing it right, because you sound a lot like myself. And in my shows, if you watch my podcast over and over, you would hear me say these things right down to just the wilderness part of it. Just the, you know, go in for survival, like carry stuff for survival. Think that you're going out for a hike. You know, if you don't find anything, at least you're getting off your ass and getting outside and enjoying Mother Nature, or you bring a family member, or whatever the case might be, right? And then when we find things, what we do is we talk about it working backwards. So we go to the point of it, and then we kind of work away from it and try to debunk it in that sense. And, you know, it's funny. The other thing, like you mentioned, like talking to people and having people to rely on, like, for instance, I have Matt Moniz, Dave McCullough, Tim and Eric Vogel, names that you know what I mean, that I can reach out and just say, like, Tim Vogel's huge for the outdoors. Like, I'll just send him one thing, and he's like, boom, that's what it is. I'm like, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, I've known those guys, Dave and those guys, the whole Massachusetts crew. I've known them since I got into the topic, about 2015 or so. Great guys. Yeah, I've been fortunate, though. You know what I mean, Alex? I've been really fortunate, and I've surrounded myself with good, positive guys that have that same type of like-minded, you know, sense, where
you research, sometimes I'll bring things to him and I'm like, is that far reaching or what, where am I at? And I'll have a conversation with him. I think there was some weird thing that happened and I sent Tim a picture and he's like, porcupine. And I'm like,
that's cool. I mean, and that's great. I think it's great too. And people, when they have stuff they don't understand, you have the internet now, you have resources. I mean, there's nothing stopping people from, if they find something weird in the woods they don't understand, email a biologist, find somebody that works for whatever your state, whether it's the Fish and Game, or I don't know what you guys call it in Mass. I think it's like the Department of Environmental something, as opposed to, we have like kind of game wardens up here in New Hampshire, like Northwoods Law type stuff. Yep. There's nothing wrong with just emailing those people. Don't be like, hey, is this Bigfoot? Just be like, hey, I found this in the woods. Right. I'm curious as to what this is, and maybe they'll get back to you or look it up. There's a lot of communities on Facebook and Reddit and elsewhere that talk about animal sign or tracking and other things. So go outside of this Bigfoot bubble that you might be in to look for answers, because a lot of times in the Bigfoot community, or whatever lack of community, whatever dysfunctional kind of cesspit it is, it's like a lot of communities, they get confirmation bias, and you're going to get, it's an echo chamber. So you'll probably hear, oh yeah, you post a tree structure online, oh yeah, that's definitely Bigfoot. Well, no, ask some people that do bushcraft. Hey, is this something you guys might do? I mean, I've had situations like that where people are insistent that they're dealing with a Bigfoot structure, and it looks exactly like the kind of things that I used to do when I did survivalism back in the day in bushcrafting. We used to make debris shelters and lean-tos, and they might deteriorate a little bit, and voila, somebody comes across it and it looks like a structure or whatever they want to claim. But I think too, nowadays in the 21st century, we're more and more disconnected from nature. Even our ancestors a couple hundred years ago, even a century ago, they lived so close to the land, and now everything is getting more urban and suburban. A lot of people, the only times they get into the woods is to go to a national park or to like a state park. And there's nothing wrong with that, but people, I think our senses and observations in the woods are skewed nowadays as compared to prior. So try to educate yourself on just basic animal sign and behavior and that sort of stuff. And I think just be rational. Go out there in the woods. Not everything, you're going to have Bigfoot on the brain, which is confirmation bias that you think everything is Bigfoot. No, I mean, take a step back, make sure you document, learn how to do basic data collection. There's a lot of great people making DNA kits, and you can 3D scan with your phone nowadays, 3D scanning apps. Scaniverse, exactly. So it's like, see, this is I don't check my phone for 2 minutes and this is what happens. So just so you know, I'm not like, it's
none of it's me.
No, not, I mean, it's like, so it's crazy. But my point was, I was trying to show the Scaniverse app. So like, this is super cool. You can scan. I mean, this is one, I think I scanned this at the Lemonster event, actually. This was a patty cast that somebody had, and you can kind of see it on here.
It's awesome.
So you can, so any kind of weird print you find. I mean, I have one.
Yeah, you showed me Scaniverse up in Lemonster. Check it out.
This was a track that something, I don't know if it was a track or not, but it was a weird impression we had found up in Area A in Alaska.
Oh, I see. See, mine's like this. This is the one I got. I don't know what that is. See that one?
Yeah, but see, that's the cool thing about the Scaniverse and these apps is you can get the scan, and then it's better than a photo. It's better than a track. It's better than a track casting, which can break. A photo it's hard to see depth and all that stuff.
You could measure it and everything.
Well, you can also send it. You could upload that and send it to your buddy. I've had people send me their scans before, and then I can scrutinize it myself. So if you find a track or something weird, take your pictures, get your scale object. Either measuring tape is preferable, but if you don't have that, just use like a dollar bill. They're all the same size. There you go.
Ready? Look at it's one of these.
Yep. See, I tell people so many times people just they'll use like a knife, their shoe, or their hand. That's not, not everyone's hand is the same. Not everyone's shoe is the same. Not everyone's knife is the same. Use a dollar bill. If you have nothing else, dollar bill is perfect. So get your photos and then do your scan. And if you have material to cast a print, do that. So you have three tiers of evidence for the same alleged track or trackway. You have photos and video, a track and a 3D scan. I mean, there's no excuse nowadays in 2024 to not be using some of this technology. And I see someone's asking, is it for Android? I don't think Scaniverse is, but I know my buddy Mike Ann, who's fantastic guy. He uses Polycam for which I actually do have. I don't have it downloaded anymore, but I do have Polycam.
Yeah, because you have an iPhone, that's why.
I have an iPhone.
Yeah. See, guys, if you got an Android, you've made a big mistake. That's what he's saying.
Pretty much. And so here's Polycam, right? This is Polycam.
Yeah, he's seen the picture, Walter.
I have some scans in here that I did, but
yep. Like I used the Scaniverse. Remember the picture I sent you, and you remember you mentioned that you weren't in the structures, but it was kind of bent at the bottom,
right?
And you were like,
here's Scaniverse.
Oh wow, yeah.
So this is the Florida Panther track we got down in the Everglades last year.
Yeah.
So that you can see how incredible, of a scan that is, and I can animate it. I can just look at it.
Hey, when you do it straight on, it looks like that Han Solo stuff that he was frozen in.
Right. So there you go. There's a little.
Oh yeah, and it spins. Yeah, that's video. Isn't that so cool?
So yeah, there's a lot of cool tools like that, and these newer phones. Everyone's got newer smartphones. You've got the LiDAR technology, whether or not they're Androids or iPhones. Yeah. So like I said, if you have a newer Android, you can get Polycam.
Yeah, Polycam.
Yeah, I know that's what. Again, my buddy Mike Ann, Tactical Bigfoot Research over in New York State, upstate New York. He uses that on his Android, and it's a great program. Scaniverse is great too. There's no excuse not to do that kind of stuff nowadays, especially when you're out in the woods. If all you have is your phone, hey man, I've got so many apps on here that I use. I've got the Bigfoot Mapping Project app. I've got
you do
a bunch of apps that connect to my thermal imagers. I've got.
Do you have a picture of your? I'm sorry to cut you off. Do you have a picture of your Petakov media investigations that you've done? Is that, you said you had like a map of all the places you've been?
Oh yeah, if you go to my website, petakovmedia.com.
Oh,
and you go to
have
film.
You gotta have that on the phone, bro. We need that on the phone.
Yeah,
there's got to be an app for that.
It's just a Google. It's a Google. If you go to film and video on my site, it's just a Google map, and it's just got little Bigfoot icons for. You can click on them, and it'll give you the link to the video from that area. So that's cool. That's cool. That's pretty much it. And
I use the Scaniverse on what we deemed as huts, in a sense. That's what we're calling them, because we don't know what else to call them at this point, right? We're going to go back out and do some more research on them and try to figure out where they're coming from. We've crawled around them looking for hair. You do all that stuff. But the Scaniverse is cool, like you said, because, look at this. Have you not met my producer, Bobby Lee?
I don't believe so.
You haven't. Bobby Lee, where you been hiding? There it is.
Yeah, if you just click that full screen icon, you can then should be able to see the map. So yeah, you can zoom in, and it kind of gives you the list of locations. And if you click on an icon, it'll give you like a link.
Yes. And what's this stuff I hear? Were you in North Korea or something?
I did go to North Korea in 2015 when I was when I got out of school and I was traveling around Europe, and I went over to Asia for a bit, and I did go over to North Korea actually. There's a video. If you go down on my, I don't know if your producer's still on that website. If you just scroll down from there, way at the bottom, you'll see a video driving around North Korea, and it'll show you kind of some secret iPhone footage I got while I was there. I wasn't supposed to film, but I did.
I was gonna say, are we in trouble if we show this?
Oh no! I mean, I've obviously I'm not planning on going back there anytime soon, but yeah. So if you just back out of the map, go back to the main site, and go scroll all the way down, you'll see driving around North Korea short video 2015.
Look at this! Oh, I love that! I am so excited for that series. That's gonna be a series, right? Strange Places, obviously, right?
Yeah. Strange Places. I'm working on the
Strange
second
Places. Sorry,
now.
I'm so stoked for that.
So this is the video. Yeah.
What do you? That's with your iPhone?
Yeah, this was 2015. It was, I don't even know what iPhone it was, but I was just pressing my phone up against the screen.
No way.
And I put some weird Korean music on there.
That's awesome.
North Korean music, that is.
Look at the color. It looks like Miami with those colors.
Very strange, man.
Very, very strange, yeah. Wow. Man, you're into culture shocks, brother.
Yeah, so I mean, I did a tour there. It's like kind of like a propaganda tour, but they don't, we were driving around the countryside, and there was we were seeing people. There's in that video too. There was this blue truck we go by, and there's a bunch of people sleeping in the back on like a pile of trash, and a bunch of the people on the tour started taking pictures, and the tour guides started getting upset and making them delete the pictures and stuff like that in the videos. So that was kind of weird. So then what I started doing was I would take my phone and I'd press it up against the glass window on the bus and just kind of like I would like lean up. I would lean up against it so it didn't look like I was filming. And then it was really stupid. I don't recommend doing this, but I was
don't do that.
I was like 22, 23 at the time.
Do one of those big yawns like you're in the movie theater. Oh.
Yeah. I was like, I was younger. I was young and stupid, but so I did that and I like smuggled it out, but they didn't check it. I mean, it was just weird. But yeah, so I did. It was like a government propaganda tour because I spent about a month in South Korea, and then I went to North Korea for like a tour. You got to go into China and then fly to North Korea. Oh. And this was right before that American kid got caught there, and this was like a month before he got caught. That was a horrible story. It was honestly, it was kind of spurred on as a joke. I was always interested in that whole Korea situation. I had some close friends that were Korean. So I was always really confused about this whole South Korea, North Korea thing. I mean, it's just like the war still has never officially ended, even though it's been over 50 years, 70 years now. Crazy stuff. So, I knew I was going to go to Asia, visit some of these friends. I had a friend who was in the South Korean military at the time over there. So before planning, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to go to North Korea? Ha, ha, ha. Good joke, right? Like, I'll just go to Japan or something. But then I started doing research, and you can it's very easy to go to North Korea. You just go through a tour company that's based in China. You get a visa, and you go there it's an organized tour. So you can't just like rent a car and go wherever you want. You're always being escorted around, or you're in a group of, there was like 60 of us tourists. So there's people from all over the world. There was probably 20 of those were Americans. The rest were a bunch of random Europeans, some Japanese, a lot of like young, intrepid explorer types. So I met a lot of really cool people that are kind of going to those off the grid, not like touristy destinations. Like nobody, North Korea is kind of a weird place to go. So people who are more adventurous. So you go on this tour, and it's, you kind of have to suspend your belief for a few days and just accept their version of reality. Even though you may have your own thoughts on it. Like they took us to war museums and glass factories where they show us how they're making their own glass, and they're totally not importing it all from China. Just like really weird stuff that you wouldn't normally do as a tourist, but it's one of those experiences that I wouldn't trade for anything. It was 5 days of just total bizarre weirdness. Like you're going into this last vestige of strange 20th century communist authoritarian kind of system.
Shocking.
Yeah, it was very weird, especially after South Korea. Like it's so that's what's so crazy about it. And I did a film about it at the time called Two Koreas, and it was just about my travel experiences in both countries. South Korea is this hyper capitalistic, highest internet speeds in the world. Very westernized. It's extremely advanced, right? Think of Samsung, everything. Yep. And then 45 minutes north of Seoul, where I was, is like, a lot of people don't even have electricity, I guess, in some areas. Jeez. It's just it's a very shocking kind of difference. So I got to go to the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone.
Correct.
Which is I think it's the 45th parallel. I'm not, I have to fact check myself.
I think you're right there. Yeah.
But so that's where, after the Korean War, that's where the lines had ended, right? With the Chinese and the Americans and the South and North Koreans. So that's been a heavily militarized border. You can visit it on a tour. They have daily tours from Seoul, 45-minute drive north, and you're basically on the border with North Korea. So I did that while I was in South Korea. And then a week later, I was approaching the DMZ from the North Korean side, which was just freaking wild because I'm staring down with these South Korean and American soldiers across the way. And I'm like, these guys were probably my guides a week ago showing me this area. Now I'm on the other side, and they probably have no idea. I know. So it was really weird. It was just a bizarre kind of thing to do. But yeah, it was an amazing trip. I wouldn't trade it. It was funny. And even in my video, I talk about how I went from, I started at the time I was in Belgrade, Serbia, which is where a lot of my family's from, which used to be the capital of Yugoslavia, which was a socialist country. And my flight travel, I flew from Belgrade to Moscow, Russia, which was the former capital of the Soviet Union, right? And then I flew to Beijing, China from there, which is the capital of a country that's still communist.
Yes.
And then from there, I went to Seoul. And then so I did my time in South Korea, and then I go up to Beijing again, and then to Pyongyang. And then it's weird. You leave North Korea and you fly back to China, and you're like, oh, wow, I finally feel kind of more free. with China, free country. It's weird, right?
Yeah,
but so my point is, I started my journey from one end of the former socialist world and ended up in the only part that's still kind of communist between China and whatever North Korea is. I wouldn't really call it communist. I don't know what
I call it.
It's a weird authoritarian kind of they worship the family there, but it's a very strange place. But no, it was an interesting experience.
Did you go into the boardroom? Do you know what I'm talking about? The boardroom where they have a table set up where the South Koreans come in and then the North Korean. That's where they have a meeting.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's called the JSA, or the Joint Security Area. So that is administered by the United Nations. It's like the Blue Houses. You might remember when Trump was president, he walked over the line there. There's that famous picture. Mm-hmm. So a lot of presidents, a lot of politicians have been there. So that is technically an area where, like, the Blue Houses in the middle are on both sides. So you have one side, North Korea. So when you do the South Korean tour, you're being escorted by American soldiers and South Korean soldiers, and they take you into this room, and they coordinate with the North Koreans, like, hey, we got a tour coming and whatever. So it's to avoid any hostilities. And so you go in and you're in South Korea, and they're like, oh, you can step onto the other side. And everyone's like, oh, look, we're in North Korea. Ooh, step 2 feet in, and then they go back. But then, and they were very strict about everything. They were like, oh, don't touch anything. Don't sit in the tables. They're like, don't take any pictures or you might get shot. And it was just like, what the heck? It seemed like a little overhyped. They said you could only take pictures from certain places. And they were very like, we got to rush and get through it. And then you go from the North Korean side, and they were very lenient. They were like letting us sit in the table, letting us take photos. Like, it was, I think they know that they're stricter on the South Korean side. So they're attempting to seem more lenient and more easygoing, which obviously, is kind of funny. But again, it was like my experience at the DMZ. I went into the Blue Houses twice in the span of a week from different sides, because I did that tour from Seoul, like my last few days in South Korea. And then I knew I'd be flying to North Korea and they'd be taking us there as part of the tour. So it was just really crazy being able to do that kind of right towards, like within a week of each other. So that was pretty wild.
That is pretty wild. Now during this whole time, not once do you go, I need to go find Bigfoot. For me, it would just drive me nuts. I'm like, I got to go find Bigfoot, whatever they call him. What do they call him in China? Do you know?
There's these stories of the Yeren in China.
Yeren.
I know back in the day they looked at it, but no,
nothing.
I don't know. At the time, I wasn't really focused on that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I'd gone to Loch Ness during that period as well, but I didn't start doing the Bigfoot stuff until about a year after that, when I got back I was over there in Europe for a while in Asia, and then when I got back to the U.S. later on, is when I just started doing some random Bigfoot documentaries here and there, and that's kind of what I started doing for a while. So yeah, I wasn't really thinking about it.
Locked in then, yeah. But now you'd be like, oh, I gotta go find them. Like, I've already been there. I gotta go find them. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just got so into it and so jumped down the rabbit hole, as we call it, right? In such a chaotic manner where, like I said, I was dealing with things in my yard out of nowhere, and for a long time I was hearing like footfall, like way out. It was like way out, right? And then you hear snap, snap, and all this stuff, and I'm going. And now my land is 3 acres, right? And then there's 94 acres of conservation. Then there's the Taunton River, right? So it's kind of a bottleneck. So it was very strange. Nobody's out there. You know what I mean? So I was like, what the hell's going on out there? I own the property since 2002. I still own it with my first wife. And that's when I go over there, kind of still look into the area and check out the different changes that have happened, It's just a bizarre place. You know what I mean? So I drove it. So I couldn't go anywhere. Like, even now I go, I got to see if that place has got any Sasquatch. You know what I mean? Like, it just gets you. Oh, by the way, Crystal jumped in. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. What's going on, Crystal?
Yep. She said hello. And you rock. Yes, you do. Yep. Rock star right there. There you are. Yep. There she is.
Yeah. I've known Crystal for a while as well. She, one of the earlier people I met as well in this topic, kind of in the local, at least in the New England area.
Yeah. No, it's good to have everybody around here that, for me, like I said, I'm finding more and more people. Like, we're going up to the Charman's Fair farm there that we've been talking. You and I kind of elaborate a little bit on that. And I know Dave McCullough, the Moniz brothers are going to be there. Crystal's going to be there. Mike Trainer's going to, Mike Trainer, right?
Yeah. He's been in one of our videos.
Yes, he was. That's right. He was in one of your, was that the Bridgewater Triangle one?
That was the Bridgewater Triangle one. Yeah.
Yes. So what I wanted to do was, I was dreaming up this crazy big thing where I wanted to do like a 5-part episode, but all live. So you do like you have investigators with like 5 live GoPros, say, and you don't use GoPros, do you?
No, I do. Yeah.
I haven't noticed. I've always noticed you with your like more like Les Stroud though. Is that with the
Well,
GoPro?
see, I don't know if you can see it on my equipment shelf, but I've probably got 4 GoPros just sitting right there.
Yeah.
I do use them.
Before, but
we use them a lot. Yeah, actually, yeah, we do. Just because they're easy. Like if it's, especially like this past summer when I was up in Alaska, it was raining like half the time in Alaska. So we're out exploring in the woods, and the other cameras are great, but the GoPro sometimes are just easy, especially if it's torrential downpour. It's easy to use. And yeah, I love them. I've been using them for a long time now, but they're a good supplemental camera, and sometimes a great main camera just in case when everything else is kind of going haywire or the weather is just too crazy for other cameras.
Yes. No, I love them. I have mine right here. I'm about to download some stuff from it and put it in my case. It's so easy to do that. I mean, even I can do it. Even a caveman can do it like me. You know what I mean? Pretty easy stuff. You know what I mean? So that's
they're pretty cool. I have one of the ones I have on the shelf there is died, I think recently. It was right after I got back from Alaska. So it's just for show now. But it's like you use them until they basically can't work anymore. That's how durable they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I got some cool questions coming in. You mind answering a couple?
Sure.
We generally see Bigfoot as a paranormal creature. Really? How do you believe they regard humans as curiosity or as children? As a curiosity? Oh, where they regard us? That's an interesting, in-depth question. I don't know if I see him as paranormal. I mean, I don't see him as for instance, you have a great phrase that you use that I just picked up on, and I just said it like 10 times the other day. I'm like, I got to look more into this. Evolution. What is it? Conversion evolution?
Convergent?
Convergent evolution. Yes, that's the word,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. So explain that. I mean, I kind of want to hammer, as far as the paranormal part of this question. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of the reports, which is a lot of what you have in this topic, are the anecdotal data, which is the reports that people have had, right? They've submitted whatever to databases, or I've heard a lot of these stories personally, so they're kind of observed behaviors, maybe what these things are doing. A lot of the encounters seem to be maybe some curiosity going on. You've got people in their campground, something's being messed with. We don't know what these things are, but you have to imagine if it's something, whatever it is, if it's human-like, primate-like, very similar to us, all the other primates are curious. We're very curious. Like, we're extremely curious creatures, us as human beings, as a species. So I imagine these things are probably curious. Some of the reports, again, have exhibited that sort of curiosity. But I mean, it's just speculation. We don't really know. Obviously, you can only take those eyewitness encounters so far, because they're not confirmed. Most of them are not confirmed. This happens to people who don't usually expect it to happen to them. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of, I guess, a little bit of a tricky question, but there obviously there isn't an answer. Otherwise we would have one. I'd be able to tell you a matter of fact.
Yeah, no, right. No, but again, I have great topics, and Purple Boar comes into my show a lot, and he has great conversation. Him and another gentleman, Claude, I don't think he's here tonight, but they have some profound type questions. You're like, really? Let me think about that. Like, really?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, personally, I can theorize that I think these things are probably curious, right? Maybe somebody's doing something weird in the woods, and they're like, hey, let's check it out. Maybe it's the juveniles. Who knows? I mean, this is all, again, hypothesizing and kind of theorizing what might be going on, but basing it off of other known creatures. Maybe there is a curiosity. I mean, a lot of creatures are curious. Most animals, even cats and dogs and other, deer, moose. I mean, I have tons of videos of moose and deer messing with my game camera, trying to figure out what it is. They're curious, right? So imagine something with a little higher intelligence than those kind of more basic kind of species. Then yeah, there'd probably be an element of curiosity. Do we know that for a fact? No, but obviously we're just kind of theorizing.
No, and we should, and that's the way. It's like when I go out with the Burks, Walter and Patty Burke, and Mojo and I, we're all like a squad now. We go out and kind of do it together, and they have that theory. The technique with the recorders, and it's the same thing. There's different curiosities that kind of, you can hear them approaching these recorders. You know what I mean? It could be anything that knows it's there, whatever. But it's like that collects kind of a data as well. Like over the night, you know, at nighttime and stuff, you hear a lot of stuff 2 a.m. that you're like, oh, okay, that's about all. That's it. So you can eliminate things from the list, you know. So there's, like you said, there's many creatures that are curious, but some of them will know that this recorder is in a bag up here on this tree, you know, and they'll go over, like you're saying, and you can almost hear them like hitting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Working the bag.
Yeah, I mean, you've got videos of bears destroying trail cameras because it smells like
correct
ants, you know, some of the plastics used. So
yep.
You have to realize a lot of other animals have better senses than we do. So they could probably spot stuff that's out of place. And again, is that a curiosity factor? There probably is, but until we have further ways to substantiate that, we can only use known examples and kind of speculate. But yeah, there's, you know, I can think of eyewitness encounters where, you know, some stuff is people have witnessed boat paddles being touched with other things, kind of like in a curiosity, like a tinkering fashion. So that would, to me, indicate some kind of curiosity.
Well, that would bring me to the case where up at the cabin up in Alaska, the handprint, almost, and again, I'm not saying that it was a Bigfoot handprint, but
right,
they're theorizing once again. But if you could see the way it was, I was always yelling at the TV, going, "Look at the way it's angled. He's looking in."
That's what we thought. I mean, because that window is one that is, you know, they've had some stuff happen in that backside of that cabin. So we kind of thought, well, what if it was like leaning? Because it was a really weird position. That's, you know, and that's one of those things that that's a weird thing you find, and that's not a moose, like that's not a bear leaving something that is either a human handprint or something very human-like. Yep. That's one of those things where it's not like there's any ambiguity, room for it to be a bear or a moose. Right. I mean, there's dramatic glyphics, there's that whole thing. So could be human, yeah, sure. But I think the point is that it is something human-like, whatever it is. But yeah, that was kind of our theory, that maybe it was peeking through the window.
I thought so. Just by the way the hand angle was, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of times too, you and I theorize in the same way, believe it or not, just me, right? That I don't believe I don't believe the Gigantopithecus thing. I just don't. I think there's an element of human there more so, and primate and intelligence and looks that have been described. I think it falls away from the Gigantopithecus, to be honest with you, because yes, it has like the break in the foot and all that, and the grip like a primate would, say, to climb a tree or whatever the case might be. But like you just said too, there's a lot of human intelligence there. What your curiosity, handprints, you know, that look like it. I mean, I think you and I similar in that sense, where I don't theorize it as being a Gigantopithecus. I just can't. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting theory, and I understand why it was suggested by Grover Krantz and others at the time. I think it kind of made sense. But we really don't know a lot about Gigantopithecus. And I think that the best example I think that Gigantopithecus serves is that supposedly this ape was the largest in history ever, right? Size-wise. The only real evidence we have that it even existed are pieces of jawbone and teeth. That's it.
Correct.
There's nothing else. So
nothing.
We don't know. So, I mean, you know, there's lots of theorizing. Well, because of the way the shape of the teeth, maybe it was bipedal. Now they're saying, well, we think they were more closely related to orangutans. So they were kind of in the pongid line, which the orangutans are part of. So, you know, I think what's also kind of the case too is that we as humans, we anthropomorphize things. I think I'm saying that right, which is like we give human traits to different animals. So even gorillas and chimps, you know, they do things, they show emotions, they do these kinds of things. And like, oh, wow, they're very human-like. But they're actually not. Those are traits to those animals that just happen on their own. They happen to us. So it's possible that and that's kind of the convergent evolution, that maybe something just evolves. And it has qualities that might be similar to a human being while being completely different and used in completely different ways than we can only understand things as human beings. So that's the problem. I think, you know, even like you're looking at other animals and our pets and stuff, and we're like, oh, they're so cute. They look, oh, he look at the way the dog is looking. It looks like human, you know, with the eyes. Oh, yeah. Again, that's us adding human-like qualities to a creature that has no need for human qualities. And that's the same case with the primates. Yes, they're similar to us, genetically the most similar. So you can have the case where something like a Sasquatch could be seemingly human-like, but it's actually not, and its traits just parallel traits that humans have that have, again, like evolved separately. While on face level, they look, and I think that's people. I mean, this drives me up a wall, but people get really, really offended when you say that Bigfoot is an ape or a primate. They're like, no, it's not an ape. It's like, well, we are apes technically. If we really want to get technical with it, I don't
Right.
care what you think. I mean, even if you think Bigfoot is an alien or some kind of a paranormal entity, they are large, upright, supposedly, right? This is the stories that they're large, upright, covered in hair,
Yep.
and they exhibit primate-like qualities that we've noticed in other primates.
Yep.
Could be an alien, but there's still a primate-like alien, right? So I don't know
Right.
why people get so upset by that. Bigfoot is something still, and that's why I think the issue of like where people say it's human, and
Right.
again, it can have very similar qualities to human without it necessarily needing to be humans.
Right.
Because I mean, even early humans supposedly we used fire and all this other kind of stuff, right? That's what we believe our ancestors had used, and they started using clothing. So that's why we're dependent on these things as opposed to chimps and gorillas. They don't need to make fires and they don't use spears to hunt for fish and cook their food. They just eat the stuff raw. So something like a Sasquatch hypothetically just lives in the environment, has no need for any of the creature comforts that we enjoy, but they still have traits about them that might look on the face level human-like, while just being something that they completely adapted to on their own. So, yeah, it's kind of, once you get into it, it's sort of a little bit philosophical, and a lot of people just, I think, don't understand that, or just have really set in their ways. And if I had a dime for every time somebody got upset that Bigfoot was called, primate-like, it's like, I mean, okay, like you've got, again, it could be an alien, but it's clearly exhibiting traits that seem primate-like. Yep. So that is,
clearly.
That's the weird part, right? It's like you're talking about other mythological creatures, like something like Dogman, right? And I have no dog in the fight, so to speak, in that topic. But my point is there's no upright known canine species that exist, right? Like that is not a thing that exists that we know of.
Right.
Like you can't, there's no domesticated dog, house pet that walks on two legs. So there's no precedent for that in nature. Whereas primates, upright primates, there is a precedent. I mean, look at us. We are proof. We are, proof positive of that. So that's when you look at something like Bigfoot, you kind of start at a place, well, okay, it has some behaviors that parallel other known primates, bipedalism, humans, some of the other stuff reported in other apes. So that it's an interesting place to start out with. It doesn't mean they have to be human. Again, it's just maybe they have qualities that are exhibited in humans, but again, so do gorillas, yet they're completely different from us in so many ways.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm not far off to the point with hi Ken, how are you, buddy? I'm not far off with the point, like, you believe in the giant theory about long time ago. They had the bones and all that stuff. They found the giants. And then one time I had a conversation with a friend of mine. He goes, would you ever consider like the thought of like crossbreed? And I'm like, crossbreed? Like, what the hell would that crossbreed with? You know what I mean? And then it is the theory that where it's just a missing link and it's part of some course of evolution as well. Right. So have you ever
that's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. Finish that.
No, have you ever had something that connected those theories that all happened to you, like an experience in the woods or a sound or anything like that connected that?
Not necessarily. No, just I think there's just a lot of theories, right? I mean, people are on about the Nephilim type stuff, and you talk to a pastor, and they're like, people are completely misinterpreting what the Nephilim stuff is, and they're using it to fit what they want Bigfoot to be, right? If they come from that sort of worldview. There's just other theories, giants. I mean, a lot of this stuff is folkloric. We don't know. A lot of these cultures, they passed information down. There was a lot of oral cultures like the Native Americans and the First Nations people in North America. They didn't write a lot of stuff down. They did artwork, and they passed a lot of this knowledge verbally, whereas other cultures wrote more. So it's always room for interpretation, misinterpretation. One culture goes extinct. Another one picks it up and says, wow, these people believed in dragons and all this other stuff. And what do we actually make of that? Do we, some people think there's a literal, these people are seeing something literal, or is it metaphorical? That's what we're kind of stuck with. So I don't know. I mean, I've never had an experience that has told me one way or another about Bigfoot, but I don't know. I mean, some of the stuff that had happened, just handful of stuff that I would put in the category of might be Bigfoot activity, but I'd be willing to be proven wrong as well, and I'd be totally open with saying, this is not. This could be something else.
Right. And what's the closest thing that has happened to you that brings you to one of those? Like, what is it, something that you're thinking of? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, so a lot of it's been beyond the trail stuff where, we've had like in Alaska, the cabin, and hearing some of the weird mystery noises and sounds like rocks being thrown, and finding that handprint, and kind of some of the other stuff around in that area. We heard a whoop out in Bluff Creek back in 2021 after my friend's dog had been completely freaked out and terrified as we were walking around and checking some stuff out, and other people had been hearing what they thought were knocks. And then I was the only one in camp that heard this whoop along with the dog. It was just very weird sounding. Yep. I had my buddy Chris Spencer of the Olympic Project check it out, and he thought it was highly suspicious, the whoop. So just stuff like that. Again, it's like, I can't say 100%.
Chris is the audio guy, right, for them?
Yeah, he does a lot of audio stuff. He's very
he does a lot. He's really
talented with the audio. Yep. So
really good.
So yeah, it's just stuff like that again, I can't confirm. I'm not one of these people that's had a sighting or an eyewitness encounter, and I know people who have. For them, it's like they have no doubts. They have a lot of times they want nothing to do with the subject, or maybe it's propelled them into becoming a researcher and wanting to find out more. You see that. You see both. I've seen both sides of that, but I mean, everything I've come across indicates to me that there's some kind of mystery creature that lives in the North American landscape in certain areas. Again, I have no idea what it is or what it's capable of, but we've been to some of these places. We've heard some of these stories. People that are extremely consistent with what they talk about from thousands of miles apart, pre-internet stuff going back hundreds of years. That very compelling. Speaks. A lot of the quality speaks to traits that a species would have. Like, you go anywhere, you run into human beings, generally have similar behaviors, similar things that we do. We tend to be in groups and we do certain things. You come across groups of chimps in the Congo, they do certain things. And then you come across reports around North America of consistent behaviors, smells, noises heard, observations, that kind of stuff. It sort of speaks that maybe there's some kind of a species that is behind some of the sightings. That's at least kind of the theory. So, that's sort of the way I look at it. And I just, again, try to look at it as rationally as I can. I think nowadays, unfortunately, with the internet, there's a lot of misinformation and people who just jump the gun and are very authoritative. Like, these are the facts. This is what we know. When in reality, a lot of it's speculative. And I think a lot of people get latched onto that. And then they just can't, when somebody tells them otherwise, they can't accept that this might, there may be a difference in opinion, or there may be, well, that's your experience, that's not mine. So it doesn't make it a fact, right? I mean, it can really depend.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing with us. Like, I'm open to everything. So we think differently, and I respect everybody's thoughts as far as whatever research they're doing, however they're doing it. If they're boots on the ground, you got to respect it. I don't care what it is. You know what I mean? That's fine. If they want to jump to whatever, I don't need to jump with them. You know what I mean? So that's my type of theory and my type of thinking. So what I do with my research is we try to remain open-minded about everything, but I turn over everything. So I don't mind looking at a structure or whatever the case might be and trying to dissolve. What else you doing out there? Like you said, if you don't find something, I'm at least going for a nature walk, but I like to take a little time and look around too. You know what I mean? So I tend to pick, and I'll run it by people no matter what. I don't care. Hey, that's Rich. That's not. I'm learning as I go. I've been in this for a decade now. I've had experiences in my property for a long time, and I've had a lot of different things. But I found a lot of weird, as I call, oddities. And it doesn't mean, like you're saying. I mean, I've heard puckwudgies. I've heard all kinds of things. Trust me, I'm in the Bridgewater Triangle, man. It's weird. The place is weird. This is the way. Anyway, you want to slice it. That's why I was talking to somebody about putting like 5 investigators, 5 different GoPros, be on YouTube, and the guy can click whatever whatever GoPro he wants to go with each whatever researcher they want to watch, right? So that's the type of theory. So that way you're getting it back raw data and experiencing what that investigator is experiencing. You know what I mean? And I think that's huge because then we add validity to our research field. Because you start going behind closed doors, like the production and all that. Like you said, one guy's a shoe salesman, and all of a sudden he's an actor looking for Bigfoot. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that hurts us in a sense. So I kind of stay away from that. The only time, if there's nothing else on, I'll check them out. And I love checking out the different equipment because they always have cool equipment because they can all afford it. You know what I mean? Like, the productions can afford it,
Right.
And Ronnie, I don't think it's his dog. Okay, don't worry about what he's doing. All right. Well, baboon dragged his dog into the. Oh my goodness, Ronald.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, that's the thing, though. Yeah, anything can happen. I mean, you can be out in the woods and have a mountain lion drag your dog in the woods. You know, it's like, but millions of people go out in the woods all the time and don't have anything happen. So it's, you know, there is the chance that something can happen, but that's inherent, I think, with just going out into nature, and you can always run into danger. You never know, but it's good to be equipped and take your safety seriously and take precautions. And, you know, I go out with a buddy who has a dog. We go out all the time and never had anything bad happen. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen, right? I mean, it's just luck of the draw on a certain day, but it's it's one of those things that I think in general, like you're kind of talking about, just different people looking at different stuff, and it's fine to have different opinions. Like I have plenty of people I'm friends with I disagree with on these topics, lots of other things. Doesn't mean I dislike them. It's just I may look at it differently, and I'm using my experiences to base what I'm kind of the way I'm looking at it, right? You know, if I have something that happens, maybe changes my mind, sure, that's fine. I can reevaluate. It's not like I need to be stuck in one area. But I think a lot of people get they get overzealous in their positions, and they are, again, I think it's the matter of fact, the absolutes. We don't know the absolutes. We just don't.
Right. Well, yeah, we're not holding hands with one.
I think people are really scared of being wrong. Nobody likes to be wrong, right? Nobody likes to look like an idiot, but it happens. When you're just out doing stuff, you know, I've been wrong all the time, and it's great to be able to admit it and say, well, okay, this is not what we thought it was.
Correct.
And here's what it is, whether it's Bigfoot or anything else in life. But I think people get the ego is a thing. People get so worried about being proven wrong and all this kind of stuff. Just be transparent, be open about it, and say, hey, look, you know, we don't know everything. It's arrogant to assume we know everything, but I think a lot of people do. And then when they do get proven wrong, and we've seen this happen within the Bigfoot topic, within other topics, people double and triple and quadruple down and say, no, this is what it was, because they also get emotionally attached to their alleged evidence or their experiences. So, you know, you should be open to people wanting to kind of tear it apart in a critical sense. Look at it. Hey, you know, I have this piece of video. Like if I got a thermal video tomorrow, you know, I wouldn't immediately post it online and say, hey, I got definite proof. Like this is 100% Bigfoot proof. I would send that to people that I trust, and maybe people I disagree with too. Just say, hey, can you look at this for me? Tell me, am I crazy? And then be willing to accept people wanting to understand the circumstances behind it. Correct. Don't get defensive about it. At least the way I see it.
I knew you weren't a structure guy, Alex. I knew you were not, and I sent that picture out because you're an outdoorsman, and you've been in the bush and in BC and all these different places, right? I would be remiss if I didn't send that to you, wouldn't I?
Right.
And I already knew you were, and you said, you know, I'm not a structure guy, right? And I said, yeah, I'm fully aware, but what is it? And you weren't sure.
Right.
Like,
that's exactly.
Why wouldn't I send that to you? That'd be crazy if I didn't.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Again, it's like, don't be afraid to reach out to people about this stuff. And again, as I think I talked about it earlier, come across something weird in the woods, you know, what's the worst that can happen if you reach out to like a biologist or maybe like an arborist, somebody that specializes in trees, right? And just find a local person, email them, or post it in one of those groups. Like you would be amazed how much of this stuff is. And we live in the internet age. You can find almost anything at a finger click away. There's no excuse nowadays. You can go to like a local arborist page and say, hey, I found this in the woods. Anybody have any theories? You're probably going to get 30 different theories, and you know, some of them people might be mocking you or whatever, but don't even bring up the Bigfoot thing. Just be like, hey, I found this. It's weird. That's just an example. And you know, like I've done stuff where I've reached out to different scientists and other people that they specialize in like primate dermatoglyphics. Hey, can you look at this handprint for me? Like with the Alaska handprint, I reached out to a few scientists and they gave me their opinions. And, you know, I can choose what to do with those opinions. I can accept them or I cannot, but there's somebody that specializes in that. And that's just one of those things about, I think people are scared to reach out to, but they feel like there's people who are inaccessible, but there's so many resources now with online. And even like, here's an example. Recently, I was in Florida with a bunch of great people, some friends. We were doing some research down there, an experiment, if you will. And, you know, we had service out there because a lot of places in Florida where it's super flat, you have service on your phones, which is kind of unusual for me. Most of the places I'm in, you don't have that. But there's these apps you can get which identify bird calls. Yeah, look at this. Just since we talked last, since I opened my phone and and it's just like it just keeps going. It doesn't stop. But my point is, there's a bird app, right? So guys are here, and especially some of us from the Northeast that were there, and we're not used to the swamps of Florida. There's tons of bird species, animals that we don't have here, that we're not familiar with. Yeah, you start hearing it, you can say, all right, let me turn the bird app on. And then this app will calculate and say, oh, this is an ibis or whatever bird. So cool. Again, these resources are so accessible nowadays. They're at our fingertips. Learn how to use some of them. There's no excuse really anymore to not to try to do some basic data collection, record audio, do all the other kind of stuff you do. Even if you just have your phone, you can. I have apps for audio recording here. I have apps for infrasound detecting on here. As crude as that is, I've got the 3D scanning, all this stuff. You have so much right here, which 10 years ago, when iPhones were kind of just starting, you didn't have the level of advancement that you do now. So
no, 100%. And Crystal brings up a great point. The pictures don't do any of these things justice, and they are hard to go on, and they're not scientific. And they are.
Well, but like a good example is do what you did and just do a 3D scan of it. That is a lot better for me to look at than just pictures. Like take your pictures, have somebody stand in the structure, let them, for scale, and then do a 3D scan. Again, you have a 2D and a 3D, and then get a video of it too. So you have three different pieces of visual evidence. Yeah, visual evidence that you can show somebody and say, all right, here's my photos, here's my video, and here's my 3D scan. That's awesome. Like you sent me that scan, and I'm able to look at it myself. And it's just like people do this stuff. I mean, people are using this stuff for real estate nowadays. Like, hey, client, tenant, like, I have this thing broke. Send me a 3D scan of it. Like this, there's so many practical applications for this type of stuff.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. So
100%. And
I'm going to say it one more time, there's no excuse to not use this kind of stuff now.
Yeah, there's no excuse. All right. Get it together. All right. But we have my buddy Wojo. He has a good friend. He went to college where he works as an arborist. Basically, he does research as trees at the University of Georgia. That's what he does for a living. So we sent him that and some other things. Great. So we do, look for your resources. Again, I'm very fortunate, man. I've locked in with a lot of great people, a lot of like-minded people, and nobody's jumping out of their boots and yelling Bigfoot all the time. We're asking the right question. Tim Vogel, like I said, he said it was porcupines. I was like, come on, man, you mean this ain't Bigfoot? You know what I mean? It was more like, oh, that is porcupine poop, and I touched it. That's basically what happened. But that's a whole different story. But in the same sense, we also have a pile of dung and that we've taken that we thought was an odd area. It was really large. It was a lot of fuzzy peat moss. And I know bears do that to insulate because we've had these conversations. So we've done all these conversations. But you know what? We scooped it up. We put it in a little medicine bottle.
There you go.
And we sent it off to the state of Massachusetts. Might take a year to get back. But you know what?
Right.
We're researching, man. This is what we're doing, research. And that's why I yell about it all.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Again, sending that in.
Right.
Even if you're just telling them, hey, I got this. What is it? You're not because a lot of times maybe you do send it to like a state, and maybe like in your case, Massachusetts, whatever, pick your state for an example. Hey, I got this Bigfoot scat, and you send it in. They're probably either not going to look at it or they're going to toss it out. Right. Because it's a waste of time, but don't use the Bigfoot thing. Just be like, hey, I got this animal on my property. I don't know if it's a bear or whatever it is.
Right.
Could you guys take a look at the sample? Should I be worried? Maybe, again, it might take a year, but then you've got stuff now, like what's going on with this guy, Professor Darby Orca down in North Carolina. He is doing a Bigfoot DNA study, still collecting samples. Yep. University of North Carolina. This is like the university. This guy has access to top labs and researchers, and it's one of those put up or shut up moments. Send your samples in. You got weird hair samples that might have follicles. You have alleged DNA. Send it in. Scat is not the greatest for DNA collecting, from what I was told, especially by Darby. But it's one of those things that the more people know about that, the more people can send their stuff in. And hey, maybe you have something, maybe you don't, but at least they'll be able to tell you one way or not. And if you don't do something like a DNA like this is particularly Bigfoot DNA study going on right now. As Crystal said, I sent samples into Darby. Yeah, perfect. Like that's what we want. If not, do what you did and just send it into somebody else. Because a lot of times this stuff is expensive, but try to find an area to do it that like a state or something. And don't be afraid to reach out to people, because what's the worst can happen is you get somebody either ignores you or denies you, right? Like maybe they do. You have nothing to lose by asking. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
No, we don't. And if you could, another good point too is if I had the opportunity to have a little more. So if you can collect more and not send it all in, keep some just in case you do.
That's always a good idea. Yes.
They have a little extras. Go another avenue.
We had like when we found that handprint in Alaska.
Yeah.
We had Larry Beans Baxter, who's a retired police officer.
Love that dude.
So he had, he has actual professional background in collecting evidence. Like he did this for a living. He would collect crime scene evidence. Like that's what law enforcement does, right? So you work with people who have those skill sets, maybe in their past or something like that. But what had happened was he had collected those samples and we had sent them out to Doug Hychek and part of the Legend Meets Science 2. And he accidentally sent all the samples. So, and he was like, oh man, I wish we had kept one so we could then like send it to Darby or send it to somebody else. It's one of those things you live and learn. You kind of,
you do.
If you have extras, like I've done a couple of times, I've done some hair sample analysis, and I have somebody who does that for me who's very good. They do a microscopic analysis. Like in the Darko series, we'd found hair on the cabin and we sent it in, turned out to be lynx. But we had enough of that hair though. I could just send a few hairs. I didn't need to send the whole big clump.
Right.
And I can still, so in the case that this person says, wow, this hair is mysterious, I have now a whole clump I can send to somebody like Darby. But in that case, it turned out to be lynx. So I'm like, I don't know, I can just hang on to it, whatever. It's a cool example to have, but don't send your whole sample in because a lot of times you won't get it back because sometimes
it's gone.
Either it's gone or once they've looked at it, especially if you're dealing with DNA, they might be contaminated after they've already looked at it. So it's not, you're not going to really be able to yield much. So keep some of it for yourself. But I think people think there's a lot of conspiracies about this kind of stuff and people throwing out your samples deliberately and everything else. But again, there's people you can find that are pretty low key, local biologists, people in your own states that you can send stuff into and don't have any strings attached, whether it be Bigfoot or other mysterious things. Just be like, hey, can you tell me what this is? You'll get a professional opinion. Whether or not you agree with it, it's up to you, but at least you have that opinion to draw from, as opposed to just speculating and think this hair sample is definitely Bigfoot. And then it turns out to be a lynx, and then you look like a fool.
Right. No, exactly.
You can't admit you're wrong, right? So again,
no, you already said it. It's too late.
So,
but like you're saying, though, it's a good point too that you don't point them in that direction, you don't push them in that direction. Then he might actually get your sample back anyways. Because it's like this is what it is. But if you go, this guy thinks it's Bigfoot and it looks like it might be, we should hang on to it, tell him we lost it. Then you want
right. Don't even deal with it. Yeah, just no strings attached. Again, the worst that can happen is you don't hear anything, or they just ignore you. And then you get a different result back. Like you really have nothing. That's the way I kind of look at it. You have nothing to lose by asking. Like, if you don't ask, you're going to wonder, well, I didn't ask, so I don't know.
But I think that another good point it brings up is that the best thing you can do as researchers is converse respectively. And I say it constantly on my podcast. I'm like, listen, man, I don't care if you're studying ghosts, whatever your area is, whatever it might be. For one, as a human, there's no need for it. For two, we're not going to get anywhere if we're sitting here going, yeah, well, you don't believe in this and you don't believe in that. No, we're going to sit here and bounce things off each other. Like you just said, like a 3D picture of the hut. Then I'll have a little more to work with. That's huge. We don't do enough of that as humans. And in research field, as we said, the community, right?
And a lot of people post stuff online and just say, oh, this is what this is, and then get torn apart for it. And they get, well, I shouldn't even have said anything.
Right.
Well, just leave it open-ended. Just be like, hey, what do you guys think this is, kind of thing. I don't know. That's at least in my experience. But obviously other people have different ways of doing it. And a lot of people are just ready to jump the gun and be like, this is definitely this. And, to each their own, I suppose. I'm just trying to kind of do things my way. And if people want to, try it that way, go for it.
It boxes you in. It boxes you in. You're stuck, like you said, right? Hey, before we get going, I want you to listen to something for me. Will you do that for me? This is a piece of evidence from my property with a situation. I'll give you a little rundown real quick. I had a camper on site, and it was my business office and my gaming room, right? I play a little COD all over the country. So I go out there one night. I'm waiting for all my buddies to come in, right? I'm waiting for them all to come in. So that's like in the promo that you saw, me saying I was scratching a ticket. I wasn't out in the woods scratching a ticket waiting for Bigfoot, just so we clear that up, everybody. I was actually in my camper up scratching a ticket. I hear way off in the distance, right? through the camper, but it's way off. And I know what it sounds like. I've experienced it for years, right? So I said, I wonder what's going on out here tonight. You know what I mean? And it was like 10 seconds later, maybe less, 8, 7. It was fast. It was fast. And all of a sudden, it was like a loud one, and it was much closer, Alex. It was much closer. So I don't. It's almost like one was sending a signal to another. I don't know how it worked, but it was fast, and it was up on me. So I grabbed my phone, right? Now, don't mind my, it's my old yacht. It doesn't, I was cleaning it out. But anyways, check this out. Just tell me what you think. 1974 Econoline. Might take a minute to catch up. So if you listen, ready? Prior to the banging, you're going to hear crunch and a snap of a branch. Okay. And I don't want to mean to lead you. It's just hard to hear, and you got to try to associate it. You'll know what it sounds like, because it's just clear that it sounds like that. Usually I'd be like, what'd you hear? But in this case, it's just not going to work that way. And if you don't hear that, just tell me you don't hear that. I don't care. Nope. Missed it.
I could hear
I think it's around 11 seconds. I'm sorry. Yeah. Right there. 9 seconds. Did you hear it?
I don't think my headphones are good enough.
Oh, I want you to hear this. It's so great. It's amazing. I don't know what it is, but it was scary as shit. I got to be honest with you. But the beating of the tree. I got pictures of this tree. There's a 2.5-inch dent in the bark, and the whole front end is just smashed.
I can hear. I don't think my headphones are good enough, because I've just got these ones, because when I put I've got like some noise canceling ones, but the problem is when I put those on, I can't hear myself talk at all. Like
Gotcha.
It's weird, but I can hear what sounds like wood knocks, and I don't know what caused them or what the situation was, but I mean, it didn't sound like a woodpecker to me, or somebody beating on a tree. Maybe, I don't know if it's human or what it is. Again, I can't say one way or another, but
no, right.
It's definitely intriguing. Yeah.
So when I heard it play, you hear 2 crunches, and you hear a snap of a branch. I should again theorizing that's what it hit it with. I had the one knock far away, the one knock up close, the crunch to break, and then it started beating on the tree. Now I got pictures of the tree. It looks like the tree's just skinned. You could see where he hit it from. With what he hit it from, it's this wide. You could see the ridges of what it was hitting it with, and it was about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, to give you the scenario. Pitch black. So you got my 3 acres and the 94-acre conservation out there, and a game trail. And like I said, I had been having experiences. Again, I've never seen this creature that's doing this. The other one I have is if you don't have the right headphones on, it's tough to hear. But it's when I heard that tree snap, and I told you about this when I went around with the phone, I go, "Come on, where you at?" And you hear him go, like that. It was a guttural type talk, like towards me, like intellectually, like it was new that I was trying to find it. That type of fan, you know what I mean? So, anyways, I've been dealing with that for a long time. And the pictures I have on my YouTube, you'll see. I have the pictures of the tree on my YouTube and my Facebook. It's absolutely not. Is that Mike Tinsley? Hello, Mike Tinsley. Look at this guy. Interested in the Bigfoot eating fermented apples story he mentioned on Cull's show, son. Yeah, you did. That's a good point, Mike. You did mention that. That is kind of crazy.
Like, yeah, I mean, that's I don't know the specifics. Let me see if I can find
of the fermented apple story.
Yeah, I have somewhere. I have my sightings report database. Let me
and you were talking on the side with somebody about it, like they were getting drunk or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird one. It was up in Coas County. So I have about 74-ish reports here that are in this database I kind of have of reportings from New Hampshire. About 48 that I've verified, that, 74 total. I think some of them were YouTube comments and stuff that really hard to follow up on that kind of stuff. But, gosh, where is it? Well, the gist of it was these guys were out hunting somewhere. And it was, I want to say it was near Milan, New Hampshire, I believe. So kind of north of Berlin. And they were hunting, and they got scared out of the woods because they saw this Bigfoot-like creature, and they said it was kind of stumbling around, and it happened to be near some apple orchards or apple trees in the area. So they kind of speculated maybe it was eating fermented apples. The story's been around for a while, but I've also heard it. Maybe Crystal might be able to mention in the comments if she's come across that one. I don't know if the BFR has had it.
Crystal, do you know that story? Because I got a link you can click on and jump in and tell the story for Alex if you need to.
Yeah, because like I said, that's one I've heard echoed a couple times, and I knew a guy who I think had met one of the hunters and said that he didn't go in the woods really much anymore. So it's a weird story, and I think specifically talking about Cole's show on Sunday, Mike was on there that they were talking about other animals that go out there can get drunk. Like there's videos of monkeys getting drunk and all kinds of creatures getting drunk off of fermented fruits. So maybe this might happen. I mean, it's just one of those things that it's an observed behavior, maybe in other animals. So
and that's New Hampshire? I didn't mean to cut you off. That's New Hampshire?
Yeah, it supposedly was up in Coos County, which is the furthest county north in New Hampshire along the Canadian border. It's where the Wood Devil stories kind of come from. From
Littleton area, right?
Oh, it's about an hour or two north of there, actually.
North of Littleton.
Littleton is it's pretty south for Coos County. I don't even know. Is Littleton technically in Coos County? I think
it's close. I think it's the next one over, ain't it? Because you got Gorham and
it's in Grafton. It's in Grafton County, so not in Coos. Coos is just north of the Notches, as they call it.
Yep.
Just very remote areas. I've been up there quite a bit. I was up there actually in the fall. Cool. We've gotten some drone footage of some moose bedding down and a big male moose up there. And there's just a lot of stories of wood devils. And I've spent a bunch of time up there. When I first got into the topic about 10 years ago, I was going up to Berlin a lot in that kind of area. Yeah, very wild, very remote, a lot of reports. I mean, there is reports, but there isn't at the same time because there's just not a lot of people. So
I have a story. I have a story of Berlin. Can I tell you it?
Yeah,
I have a story. And I was a young kid, and my mother lived in Pepin's Trailer Park right in Berlin, New Hampshire. And it was my stepdad worked at the Christmas tree air freshener company, and my other uncles worked at the James River paper mill, like everybody else did, basically, right? Place stinks,
right?
But we went up behind
the city the trees built, right?
That's what they say, correct? Yeah. So we went up behind the trailer park, went right up the hill, and all I remember as a kid, I didn't know anything, but looking back as an adult, it kind of has of a tale, a story. That's what it feels like. But we were going up, me and my brother were hiking, and there were these big grass clumps. They grow real big crabgrass up there. It's crazy on the side of the hills. And I kept noticing the crabgrass was pushed down, like pushed down. It wasn't like, a deer or, something like that, And then I look up and there'd be another one. And then, over here's another one. I'm going, what is going on up this hill, like all the way up? But I kept saying to my brother, what do you think that is? And I was young. My brother, believe it or not, my brother's 6'3" and redhead. And I have 5'9" and got jet black hair like you. So so what I did was hi, hello, welcome from Japan.
Wow.
Appreciate you start. Yeah, what's funny is I was looking on Spotify, I got 30% Japanese audience. Take that, everybody. No, just kidding. Welcome. So I got up there and I remember as I heard this huge crunch. And my brother was ahead of me, and I remember looking left. Didn't get a look. I'm not going to tell you I saw something I didn't. It was just a massive black mass. My first reaction as a child is beer. You know what I mean? But, reflecting back and having the conversation with my brother, the way the clumps were knocked down were very hard to say. So anyways, my brother could always run fast to me because I got legs that are like this. They're real small. Well, I beat him down that mountain by so fast that I thought that he got eaten. Like he was way back there, and I was like springing down the mountain. I was very athletic. I was like springing down the mountain. I remember that. I got down the bottom, and I go, he comes down finally. I'm like, Ross, I'm yelling for him. And I'm going, what the hell was that? What was that? And I said, it had to be a bear. We almost got eaten by a bear. He goes, no, it wasn't. He goes, it was like big. And I said, what do you mean big? He's like, big. I'm like, that's all we said. Like, we were kids. So it wasn't like, you could see her and go, yeah, I saw his face. I wasn't waiting around. I wasn't waiting around to see his face, brother. I was gone. I was out of there. Last thing I wanted to do was see that thing's face. You know what I mean? But yeah, Berlin's a great spot for all kinds of stuff up there. And like you said, the reports are low because the population's low. Yeah,
I used to go up there quite a bit. And Crystal, actually, I was up there one time with her as well. There's a gentleman that we knew called Michael Eastman who researched a lot of these areas. And there's a lot of cool spots, a lot of really weird history there in Berlin. You've got the ancient rhyolite mine on Mount Jasper, with the 10,000-year-old rhyolite mine that the Abenaki had up there. That there's just a lot of cool stuff in that area, and of course the Wood Devil story is kind of known throughout Coos County, and I've tried to track that down a little bit, and I've heard stories from people going back, in Pittsburgh, saying, I remember as a kid, my grandparents would warn me, don't go in the woods or the wood devils will get you, kind of stuff.
And how do you feel about, you've researched it. Did you gain any traction with it, or?
So I talked to the Berlin Historical Society trying to find a lead on where the term wood devil was first coined or used. They pointed me to a book called The History of Coos County from 1888, and I wasn't able to pick up a physical copy, but this was a number of years ago. I looked at a Google PDF of it, and you could search terms, but every time you search the term devil and woods, it's like all they talked about, so up in the woods, right? So it's like very tough to find the word wood devil. So I don't know where that originated, but I know for a fact it's pre-internet, because I was told stories of people who grew up in the area who said, again, they would have a family camp up in Pittsburgh, and their grandparents would warn them, hey, look out, don't let the wood devils get you in the woods. Even just in the fall, we went to investigate a property up there that was a few thousand acres, and the guy had grown up hunting there, and he talks about, the old timers used to talk about wood devil type stuff. And then one of the more interesting stories I was told, it was early 2020, I was doing a library talk in Dover, New Hampshire, about Granite State Bigfoot and that kind of stuff. And I was told a story by this woman, and this is, just still a regret. I didn't take her contact info down. I gave her my contact info, which was a mess. But you do these library talks, and people share their stories with you afterwards. It's how I got a lot of the reports in the early days, especially from New Hampshire. Yeah, which is really fascinating. So you have people telling your story. She said, well, either her father or her uncle used to be during the Second World War, was a prison camp guard up in a place called Stark Camp, which is Stark, New Hampshire. It's right up there in Coos County, very remote area. There used to be a POW camp in World War II up there where they had German POWs. There's actually a famous escape where one of the guys had escaped and ended up in New York City before he was caught. There's actually a whole book about it. It's kind of a famous case. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was a real camp. But she talked about her father or her uncle, I don't remember which one, had talked about they had put the Germans on logging duty, right? Like they were out in the woods, cutting trees, doing what you do up in Coos County. And the guys started complaining about, they were too scared to go in the woods because they were seeing gorillas in the woods, right? So that's kind of a weird description, right? If you're making up some animal to be scared of in the woods, well, I saw an elephant or I saw something. What about gorillas? Why does that? What's believable about that, right? These guys had nothing to do. These guys were not there by their own choice. This is World War II. These guys are prisoners, right? They're there because they've been placed there. They didn't choose to go there. And I guess some of the local guys said, oh, that's probably the wood devils they're seeing. So they kind of equated it to the local stuff. But I never took her info down, which I really regret. I gave her my info. She never reached out, because people never reach out to you. You got to hound them. So that was a very interesting story. I was told. It's always stuck with me, and I've always tried to kind of rekindle that or try to find out more info about that case, because that's a story that it's weird. You have people again who are not there by their own choosing. Yep. Reporting seeing gorillas in the woods and being frightened by it, and then the locals are equating it to the wood devil stories. And this is pre-Bigfoot, pre-Sasquatch. Before that was culturally known. It wouldn't be known for another 20 years, the Second World War again. So I always found that story pretty interesting.
It is very interesting. Now, Patty mentions were the stone giants from Maine and New Hampshire, and a good one for that is the wood devils too, as Mike Tinsley as well. Mike has a lot of good knowledge on New Hampshire, and we've talked a bunch of times. And
I've heard some of the fearsome critter stuff. There's a lot of folklore stuff. That's why you get they're all kind of cheesy stuff, like the what is it out in the Midwest? I know there are a lot of the lumberjack tales, right? Fearsome critters, the whip and whirl thing, and you have the ones that throw the sticks from the trees, the little ones. Gosh, I don't remember what they call them, but a lot of those are kind of folkloric, right? Maybe some of them were derived from a real creature. I don't know, but the wood devils one is interesting because of the way people described it. I mean, I've got a book here, Smoke from 10,000 Campfires, I think it is. And they talked about all the old timers debating bears that howled in the mountains at night. People would say, well, bears don't howl at night. And all these kind of stories that I have a whole bunch of bookmarks about it, which are, Bigfoot-like stories that if you were to talk about them today to a modern audience, they might say, well, that sounds like Bigfoot. But back then, 100 years ago, they didn't have a term for Bigfoot. So you have all these communities around North America that have local stories, Falk Monster, all these other like smaller kind of stories that describe a similar creature, similar behavior. And the wood devil sort of fits that. It wasn't like in the internet era, somebody said that wood devil was like its own species type thing or something weird. But most of the classic descriptions, the ones I've heard that are pre-internet, talk about tall, hairy creatures that are, basically what you described like a modern Bigfoot type sighting before. So it seems to fit into that. But, like I said, the story's been around for a while. So, and I've talked to quite a few people who grew up in that area and know about it. And, there'll be a Bigfoot sighting and they just call it a wood devil. So
that's crazy. I wish I was a little bit older when I was up there, because that place was nuts in itself. Hello from Manchester, England. Thank you for stopping by. That's interesting. Here we go. What's this? How about Gugways? Are they similar? Is that how you say? Gugways.
I've heard of that. I don't know the origins of that one. I know it's kind of one of these. Problem is nowadays, and this is a detriment of the internet, is you have so many stories that, we've had the internet now for almost 30 plus years, right? So some of this stuff you can't trace it pre-internet. If you're able to find it pre-internet and it goes back, I don't know. I don't want to say it adds a layer of credibility, but it's more interesting because a lot of this stuff is a product of just internet lore. Right. I don't know where the Gugway stuff kind of comes from, but supposedly it's some kind of Bigfoot-like creature or something like that. But I don't know what the origins are with stuff like the wood devils. I was kind of looking at the actual origins. It's not a very well-known story either. It's kind of very local. Again, you talk to people in the local area up in Coas County, and I've had people tell me that growing up in that area, I remember hearing about this in the 70s. My grandparents would warn me, don't go into the woods or the wood devils will get you. It's almost like a boogeyman cautionary story. So that term has been around pre-internet, as long as these people aren't lying to me, which I've had multiple people that have said this. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a guy, a gentleman that I've been because I'm going to be a presenter. I think it's November 2nd, and I have a whole presentation put up. But I have a friend of mine. He lives on the street. We didn't even know it till we did an investigation together. I almost followed him home. It got weird. He's like 5 houses down on the left. But his name is he has Exploring with Phil on the YouTube. He has a big following, huge channel. And he's like a Bridgewater Triangle expert. And he has a lot of the Weedamoo, whatever the different names of all the, I can't say them all. I think Weedamoo is actually a forest that Mike Trainer goes to. I can't keep up with them all. Besides the Pukwudgie, there's the Nimliths or something like that, or the Little People, and all these different things. Like you're talking about that at pre-internet, which is a great point, by the way, because this world, we get stuck in the internet world, right? We can't think past that. With 2 L's? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, all right, I tried. But yeah, Phil with 2 L's. Phil Anderson. So check him out. But he's got all kinds of things like that with the bridge. Mike, also with Mike Tinsley and yourself with this question. Do you find similarities like with these types of creatures in New Hampshire as opposed to other states, so to speak, the Vermont Triangle, up in Maine? Is that something that you would find in different areas, you think?
You're talking about
like the
Bigfoot stuff specifically?
Well, the wood devils or the different creatures like Mike just mentioned. You know what I mean? Do you ever hear wood devils up in Maine in that same area, just over the border in Maine, or anything in Vermont?
No, I mean, there's other stories in Maine. You've got Medibump's Howler, other kind of local stories in these areas in Maine. Other parts. I mean, I think a lot of these stories, especially older stories, they probably come from a place that were folkloric, or they're seen as folkloric, but they might have been derived from a real creature. And they all seem to generally be similar, very Bigfoot-like. There's usually not very many diverging details that would lead you to believe it's something else or something different. So
interesting. No, I think that, that's it. It's funny because when you say that, though, like putting it together, you know what I mean? The different names and stuff, devil monkeys in southern New Hampshire, Devil monkeys. That was the other one that he mentioned. Not just.
I've heard of those stories too. Yeah, and there's stories like that appear from time to time. Mm-hmm. Especially, I've heard stories down south in southern states with devil monkey type stuff. But a lot of the stuff, I mean, you don't know. There may be a real animal that escaped and somehow created the hysteria, or it's a more folkloric thing. But it's not being reported all the time, right? So it's not consistent. With Bigfoot, as opposed to a lot of these, the Pukwudgies, the little people, all the other kind of stories that, in my view, are a little more like, I don't want to say make believe, but folkloric in nature. The Bigfoot stuff, it has a striking consistency. I mean, I was recently just doing reports. I was looking at reports from the 1920s and 30s from British Columbia, where Sasquatch kind of originated, the modern term. Some of these reports, you could read them today. They read like a modern encounter. And I've been to places in British Columbia. I've seen 12,000-year-old petroglyph sites from a tribe that describes the Sninick, these creatures that supposedly these Sasquatch are tied to their creation myths, right? And that's part of their culture. So there's a striking consistency for hundreds, if not thousands of years with some of the Bigfoot stuff, as opposed to some of these other kind of more might be deemed folkloric stories, where maybe there's not necessarily an actual species that's responsible for some of the sightings. Whereas with Bigfoot, whether they be wood devils or the Mogollon Monster or skunk ape, Falk Monster, all these other stories that kind of maybe are pre-Bigfoot terminology, they seem pretty similar. That's just a theory, but
that's a good point.
That's the kind of way I see it.
I think it's a great point, and I think that if you have that conversation with somebody where it's starting to have similarities of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, you know what I mean? Irene in Japan says we have the what's that, Hibagon?
I've heard of that before too, the Hibagon. Yeah. Haven't looked into it very much, but it's another one of those interesting stories.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. This is what we were kind of talking about too, because this is one of the things I've been wanting to do. Is I've reached out to a researcher, Brian Terrell of Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations. He's in Oklahoma. So we've been communicating territorially as far as geographically goes and different signs of whatever we might find evidence-wise. And I want to open up the avenue to all these other researchers, that are in different, different parts of the country and then different parts of the world. So I want to have like I know this gentleman over in the UK I've been having conversation with about their Bigfoot, so to speak, right? And then having this conversation, more of a worldwide type conversation, because I mean, I know you mentioned more towards North America, but you think it's open to different, like, I mean, the Yeti is what, mainly Russia? Or, I mean,
well, so if we're talking about like a strictly flesh and blood creature, I would personally be very skeptical of anywhere in Europe or the UK having anything like that, right? I mean, I've looked into the stuff like the Grey Man of Ben Macdui in Scotland, and that's actually, I've seen videos and it's like a weather phenomena that creates this crazy shadow that looks like something's following you.
Oh, that's wild.
And people have pointed to this, and it was somebody recently told me the name of it too. I was talking about it on another show, and they had mentioned in the chat, I don't remember what it's called, but it's this crazy effect where you're climbing the mountain and there's fog and the sun's shining through, and it creates this really creepy looking shadow that almost follows you. And so that peak in Scotland, Ben Macdui, has been associated with the Grey Man stories. Right. And nowadays, a lot of people in the Bigfoot world say, oh, well, that's a Bigfoot story. There's nothing else that could be. They just cobble any old folkloric story and throw it into the Bigfoot mix because that's confirmation bias. To them, it makes sense. It's part of that. But once you kind of look at it, not. And then, there's just, maybe Australia, because there's a lot of territory out there. And then parts of Asia, so the Himalayas, you've got, of course, a lot of remote areas. Even parts of Pakistan, Afghanistan have histories of sightings with man-like creatures. And you can't get to those areas now because they're so dangerous. You will be killed. Yes. I mean, there was a French biologist who looked into a lot of these ape man-like stories in the mountains there, which are kind of like the Hindu Kush mountains. You've got K2 in Pakistan, which is the second highest mountain on Earth. Right. This is all habitat that really connects into the Himalayas and connects to millions and millions of acres of this land. And this French biologist, I don't remember his name, he was actually killed in Afghanistan at some point during, the early 2000s when the conflict was going on. But he had dedicated his life to trying to find this strange creature stories in that part of the world. And then you got, of course, in Russia, stories of the Almas and all this kind of stuff, where there's a lot of remote areas that are similar to Alaska. But once you start getting into more populated areas like Europe and the UK, I typically kind of I become very skeptical. Again, if it's a strictly flesh and blood thing, otherwise any possibility is open. You could have them seen in downtown, but why aren't people seeing them in little parts in Brooklyn or in Boston? Like it's once you start to get into that, it gets a little out of control, I think. There may be weird stuff going on. I don't know. I can't say, but the sightings, if you look at the Bigfoot mapping project, look at areas where the sightings are reported, where sightings follow wildlife corridors, they follow specific habitat and terrain that other creatures use.
Correct.
If it's something that can just appear wherever it wants, why is it strictly conforming to these areas where logically it would make sense for something to exist? People might get upset by that, but that's just the data. If we're to rely on the eyewitness data, that's kind of what it's pointing to. So, and I know Scott of the Bigfoot Mapping Project well. He's a good buddy of mine, and he specifically looks at. He's a GIS guy, so he does mapping for a living. He knows his stuff. He looks at maps done by nonprofit organizations and government, wildlife agencies that map animal corridors and look at places where wildlife moves through. He uses those maps that are, being done for official purposes, compares them to Bigfoot sightings, and sometimes it'll be crazy because you'll say, okay, here's a wildlife corridor in the southern Appalachians. You put it up and then you line it up with Bigfoot sightings, and the Bigfoots are following the corridor. It's like, okay, well, if these things can just appear willy-nilly, why aren't they showing up in the Midwest where there's almost no good habitat? Like if you look at Bigfoot sighting maps from the East Coast, once you get to out in the Midwest, it just drops off. And then it picks up again when you get to the mountains. There's nothing in between almost because I don't think it's good habitat.
No, it's 2 to 4%. I think it is 2% sightings or something like that. And then you go over or 2%. I'm sorry, not sightings, forestry. So
there's just nothing, nothing. And I have friends that research out in Iowa, and they're like, oh, there's surprisingly good amount of habitat out here. And I'm like, well, maybe I haven't seen it personally, but Iowa's not exactly high on my list to go check out. And you've got places like Washington or Alaska or even up here in the Northeast.
Let's go to Japan, bro. No one wants to. You can't. This is a great
Japan. Japan has a lot of mountains. Japan has a lot of mountains. A lot of
think about it though.
Hidden places.
Think of the cultures that won't let you. It's taboo to study something like this, right? Think about that. And it says no one wants to research it here. I bet they don't. You know what I mean? I think it's amazing that, to get this insight. Thank you, Irene, for sharing with us, researchers say that the Hibagon has changed because of the atomic bomb. Whoa.
Who knows? Maybe that killed. I don't know. I'd be curious to know if the dropping of the 2 atom bombs, if that affected other wildlife. Did other wildlife species go dead? I know Japan has bear and other large animals that are existing in the very mountainous regions, but I haven't looked. Obviously, I haven't looked into it enough to really know anything about it. But
great.
I'd love to visit Japan.
Right. Let's call Seth. I'll get Wojo. I'll grab my GoPro and we can leave tomorrow around 1 p.m. I mean, you got nothing going on, bro.
No, nothing.
I'm telling you, earlier when you said, hey, I got to sit down and eat, I'm like, oh, you eat? I had no idea you ate. I thought you just walked around with like food just being dropped.
I wish it'd be more efficient that way.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And Montana, anything in Montana? There's nothing in Montana.
I haven't been out there. It's high on my list, but obviously I wouldn't want. What's that?
Is it on the mapping project?
Oh yeah, I mean there's a lot of history reports from out there. It's great habitat. It's one of the only places in the lower 48 that still has grizzly bears, coming down from the Rocky Mountains. It's I mean that whole western part of Montana is all part of that Rocky Mountain chain that goes into Idaho and into Wyoming. So that's very great habitat you'd imagine. And there of course is history reports out there.
Yeah. And just what we just said, it's taboo to do what I do because I'm a paranormal investigator and a medium. So I have to keep quiet about what I do. Wow. Well, you could come here, Irene, anytime you want and discuss it. Saturday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, United States. I have a paranormal show, and we have a lot of great guests, and you're more than welcome to be a guest yourself. So, of course, we're going to have to change the time a little bit, right? Right, Alex?
It'd be pretty cool, though.
It would be pretty awesome, right? A lot of cool stuff here. Well, this has been really cool, man. I don't want to keep you anymore. I know you're a busy dude. I know you got a lot going on. And honestly, like I said, I knew we would just flow. We could just probably talk for days about this stuff, man. And I hope we get a chance to talk to him by a fire sometime, while we listen into the woods, bro. You know what I mean? Like, do you have an idea of anything? I don't want to push, but Charmin Farm, do we hear anything yet?
What is it?
Are you going up are you going to be at the farm?
Oh yeah. No, I'll be there at least for maybe one of the days. I'm not sure, but yeah, we'll have to see. Just because I've got a bunch of stuff in June, but I've got about like, oh, gosh, so many trips planned now because I'm doing, of course, this strange places stuff, which is more of what I'm kind of gravitating towards than the Bigfoot stuff, which I've done a lot of. You get a little bit creatively kind of burned out a little bit on the Bigfoot side of things. So I still like investigating it, but a lot of it I'll kind of like, I have been doing my personal investigating here in New Hampshire since 2015, and I've got all these reports and all this stuff. A lot of that has never seen the light of day. That's just stuff I personally logged, and that's what I'll continue to do. But Strange Places for me is more of a creative outlet to adventure, as we talked about adventuring earlier in the show. That's something that I'm obviously really big on. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I love it. Okay, do you mind if we run the trailer? I think we have the trailer. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead.
I know you're a busy guy. So, hey, Bobby Lee, are you still here? Oh, look at her. She's on it, dude. She's so good. Except I can't hear it. Love it. Love it. And you do it, and you do all your own editing, right? Am I right by saying that? Wow, it's just awesome, dude. I love watching your stuff. I truly love it, man. You know, it's funny. Before I go, I gotta tell you the running joke in my house. I wash dishes, right? I stretch before I go to softball. Yes, I'm an old fellow. I still play softball. So I always have my leg up on the counter washing dishes. And I watch Small Town Monsters or Beyond the Trail or something. And then you come on narrating, and what is my fiance? It says, "Are you in there washing your dishes with the leg up, listening to that guy with a sultry voice again?" It's just a running joke around the house and wherever that goes. It is real funny. No, listen, man, for me, it sounds coming from an older fella, but you were like a mentor of mine in this, and I really appreciated all the content and hard work that you put into this stuff. The editing, the honesty, the integrity, the boots on the ground. That's the stuff that I feel like I'm going in the right direction just by hearing you talk and hearing you say what you say. So that helps me a lot. And when you start experiencing things that you can't explain, it is life altering. It's different for me. Life became different when I started hearing guttural things, and it did. And I didn't know who to go to. You know what I'm saying? What do? You turn to the productions?
Right. Yeah. I appreciate it. I really do. I'm just a guy. I like adventuring, getting out there. These are my investigations. They're my opinion on things. They may differ from what other people seem to enjoy coming along for the ride. I love showcasing nature in some of the areas we get to go in. And like with Strange Places, I've got so many freaking crazy things planned. I'm working on episode 2 right now. So going in all these different directions with that. So I think it's good. Just remember, people just keep a level head on, don't let the ego get too much. Just keep it real, keep it rational. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people online and in these spaces that they have a truth they want you to know, and they will lie to you. They will make stuff up, and they want to be the one with the answers for whatever reason. I think just be humble about it. And I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm preaching or anything.
No, but
I'm just a guy, and these are just my observations and what I have going on. And take it. You interpret as you will. I'm not trying to force feed anyone a narrative or anything they shouldn't accept. And question everything. Anything you get told, don't take my word for it.
Right.
Just do your own research. That's, I think,
no, absolutely. And I've pushed that over and over and over again. And the same thing that you're saying right now, again, it tells me I'm on the right line, because I try to be, and everybody that I researched together, Wojo, Patty Burke, Walter Burke, you know what I mean? Like, we all kind of keep it together, keep our heads together. Mike Trainer, I go out with Matt Moniz, Dave McCullough. It's nice to be able to keep that thing, you keep it all together. One last thing I'm gonna leave you with is when I had an investigation with Dave McCullough on my property when he came to do a report for the BFRO, right, a while back, and Squatchachusetts as well. We heard the Sierra Sounds. Can you imagine that? Do you remember that part of the Sierra Sounds where it sounds like a language that what's his name broke down? Steve, what's his name? Do you remember that?
I think so, yeah.
It was like, like that. Do you remember that part of the Sierra Sounds? Ask Dave McCullough sometime. We sat there with our jaws on the floor, man. 100%. And if you ever get a chance to come down the Bridgewater Triangle again, I'm dead serious. If you ever get a chance to come down the Bridgewater Triangle again, like, I'd love you to check this place out. And it's not a big area, and it's a place where it's plenty viable, but it might be an area where you say, nah, I can't be here. But me and Dave McCullough sat there, and a local folklorist and author as well stood there. There was 3 of us, and we were packing to leave. And I put my backpack on, and I almost reached for my phone, man. I almost went like this, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to ruin this moment. You know what I mean? Like, you just, they see you move and they just run off, whatever it might be. I don't know.
Always run audio as soon as you get out of the car.
I wasn't that good at it. I was a
No, I know. I get it. I was like, we even had an experience recently where a couple of my friends had some weird stuff happen to them. Like, was anybody rolling audio? Like, no, we were too freaked out. I'm like, this is why you get an audio recorder that's just running all the time when you're in the woods.
All the time.
You learn. I've made that mistake too, and you just gotta have something running. So it's more than just a story, right? You have something to be able to.
It is. But thank God I wasn't alone, and thank God I had people with, like it was literally like, and then there was 2 of them, one on each side, and then one got done on the right and made that like chest pop or knock or whatever we assume it might be, mouth pop. And it made a knock, and then the other one picked up. It was bigger, you could tell, and it made the same noise. And then when it was done, it did the same knock, and that was it. And we just stood there, and Dave goes, Rich, I think it's time for us to go. Because my first reaction is, I'm like, I want to go, hi, it's me, Rich.
Right.
But I always
it's interesting.
Yeah, talk to Dave about it sometime. He'll tell you. It was pretty nuts. It was a pretty crazy story, and it's put me to where I am today. And I thank you for all your hard work. I truly do, and I hope other investigators see that, Yeah, see, crystals. All right, I know, guys. I know now. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us tonight. I especially want to thank Aleks Petakov for giving some extra time and hanging out with us tonight. It truly means a lot to me. I know I'm going to see you up in New Hampshire and definitely, bounce some things off you. And don't be sorry, man, if it takes you 2 months to get back to me. You said
2 months that's pretty bad. Hopefully it's not 2 months, but
no, I'm just
like I said, every time. This is again. I opened my phone recently, and now it's same thing.
Dude, you are such a humble guy, and you're so respectful, and I thank you for getting back to me at all. I truly do. In the meantime, everybody, this Saturday I have off. I'm going to do an investigation up there where the hut sites are, and we're going to go hide in the woods somewhere. So even if it's raining. So follow me on TikTok, Banter Richie B, Instagram, Banter Richie B, and like and subscribe to my YouTube, please. Make sure you hit that, right? And as Wojo always says, Alex, he says, buy the merch. You see the merch? Got to buy the merch. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Totally appreciate you.